And
Son, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Maria. Thank you.
Listen, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you.
Recording in progress.
The House Chairperson.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. You may be seated. All these things here. It's for speaker who's shorter. Honorable members, order. Before we proceed with today's business, I wish to announce that the vacancies which occurred in the National Assembly owing to resignation of Ms. P. Madokwe and Ms. T. P. Msane have been filled by the nomination of Mr. V. Kharike and Advocate B.J. Mkhwebane, respectively, with effect from the 17th October 2023. The members have subscribed to the oath and affirmation in the Speaker's office. I want to welcome the honorable members. Oh, the usual thing is that may they be seen. You may stand. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. The first item. Okay. The first item on the order paper is the statement by the Minister in the Presidency for Electricity on the Energy Action Plan activities and short to medium term interventions to limit the intensity and frequency of load shedding. May I now recognize the Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, honorable members of Parliament, members of the media, fellow South Africans. Thank you for this opportunity to address Parliament, to appraise the House and by extension the nation on the successes of the implementation of the Energy Action Plan and the associated short to medium term interventions to limit the intensity and frequency of load shedding. The national energy crisis continues to be the single biggest existential challenge in post-apartheid South Africa, and we must continue to harness all efforts to arrest further hemorrhaging caused by load shedding to our economy and the degradation of the quality of lives of ordinary South Africans. In May 2023, I stood in this august house to deliver an executive statement outlining the transversal interventions we are making to reduce the intensity and frequency of load shedding and to articulate our plans in relation to the winter plan. Working with the dedicated staff at ESCOM and industry experts, we have successfully navigated through the winter season and are beginning to turn the tide. Later in my address, I will excavate the data on the significant improvements we have made on the generation side to demonstrate the magnitude of strides we are making thus far. House Chairperson, we gather today just 2 days shy of the birthday of our stalwarts, Oliver Reginald Tambo. To punctuate where we are, I want to summon the words of our leader, O.R. Tambo, delivered on the occasion of the funeral of Comrade Joe Kabi on the 9th of August, 1981, when he said, open quotes, "The future is bright." The end is glorious, it is peaceful. But the intervening period is dark, bitter, and finds its glory in the act of struggle, close quotes. These words aptly describe the period we are emerging from, a dark period, literally and figuratively. By any measure, load shedding is an occurrence of significant consequence that South Africans have endured for some time. The president had introduced several bold initiatives to ensure the country can navigate its way out of this dark hole. This includes setting up the National Energy Crisis Committee and establishing the ministry I'm honored to lead, ministry in the Presidency for Electricity, as the focal coordinating point for the multidisciplinary and whole of society response to ending load shedding. We are restoring ESCOM to higher levels of operational efficiency and looking into transmission financing options to expand and strengthen the grid to support South Africa's new energy generation sources and guarantee energy security. Our account here today will default to an evidence-based assessment of the objective situation we find ourselves in today. For this reason, generation performance is assessed against the May baseline. Generation performance continues to improve from May 2023, base of 27,410 megawatts to 28,883 megawatts in October month to date. Last week, we saw generation breach the psychological mark of 30,000 megawatts, largely buoyed by the return to service of Kusile Units 3 and 1 over the past month. This improved generation and lower than projected demand has allowed for exceptional increase in planned outage or good maintenance. The increased planned outage means that we are improving the overall performance capacity of the fleet, improving reliability and efficiency, and steadily ensuring that we navigate to an equilibrium between demand and supply, buffered by a healthy reserve margin. The intensification of planned maintenance is expected to be sustained for the remainder of the summer months, with the objective of going into winter 2024, with the fleet in a much healthier and more reliable state, coupled with increases in new generation capacity aimed at putting the country on a path to sustained energy security. The May baseline saw planned maintenance dip around 2,500 megawatts as part of our winter plan. As we emerge from winter 2023, maintenance has been ramped up to over 5,000 megawatts since mid-August 2023. In addition to the positive trend in planned outages, outage slips have been reduced substantially. This means that increasingly, units return to service as planned following an outage, measured against the May 23 baseline of 3,478 megawatts. A phenomenal improvement has been recorded and speaks to improved efficiency of outage planning and management. For the past 3 weeks of October 2023, outage slips accounted for a mere 1,108 megawatts. As we headed out of winter 2023 season, evening peak demand began to show a downward trend. By the end of August 2023, evening peak demand tracked at about 30,633 megawatts. The current average month to date peaks evening peak demand at 27,758 megawatts. The dip in demand is also attributed to the successful implementation of increased demand-side interventions following the launch of the national DSM campaign in July of 2023 and the phenomenal growth in rooftop solar and small-scale embedded generation solutions. Rooftop solar capacity in South Africa has more than doubled since July of 2022 to over 4,500 megawatts. The unplanned capacity loss factor, UCLF, represents breakdown of units either where a full unit is taken out of service or partial load losses where a unit is not operating at its full design output. Benchmarked against the May 2023 figures, UCLF negative growth is observed, which is a positive indicator implying fewer unplanned outages are recorded.
No, this one is
a function of the increased planned maintenance and improved reliability of units. Following a period of increased planned maintenance between mid-August 2022 and and mid-October 2023, UCLF has dropped to 13,527 megawatts from the May baseline of 17,369 megawatts. This represents an improvement in available capacity of 3,848 megawatts, amounting to over 3 stages of load shedding. Units 1 and 3 of Kusile have been out of service since October of 2022. In January 2023, a decision was made to proceed with the constructing temporary stacks due to the anticipated prolonged delay in remedial works on the permanent stacks. Initial planning anticipated the temporary stacks will be completed and allow for the return to service of the 3 Kusile units from 28 November 2023 to 24 December 2023. Following various engagement with station management and project teams to fast-track the return of service of Unit 3 Kusile units, we successfully returned Unit 3 and 1 earlier than planned. This early return of the 2 units is as a result of judicious and smart engineering. We anticipate Unit 2 by the 3rd week of November to be returned to service. Additionally, Kusile Unit 4, taken out of service for planned maintenance on the 29th of August 2023, was returned to service on the 17th of September 2023, 3 days ahead of planned date. Kusile Unit 5 was originally planned for completion on 28 October 2023, but was rescheduled to later in order to prioritize the return of the 3 commercial Kusile units. Unit 5 is now scheduled to be synchronized to the grid by December of 2023. House Speaker, we have always been firm that Kusile Power Station will anchor the drive for generation capacity to get ahead of the demand curve. The 2 units returned have injected an additional 1,600 megawatts over the past month, whilst Unit 2 and 5 will add another 1,600 megawatts. This means that 4 Kusile units will provide a total of 3,200 megawatts of base load by December 2023. The last remaining Kusile unit, Unit 6, is planned to be synchronized by August of 2024. House Speaker, I am happy to report that an interim solution has been found to expedite the return of Medupi Unit 4 from August of 2024 to April of 2024. This will add another 800 megawatts of base load. Honorable members, in addition to the work to strengthen base load through the existing fleet, work continues to increase the national footprint of renewable energy. In this regard, 1,338 megawatts is expected to connect to the grid in 2023 and 3,081 megawatts in 2024. Our project from the RMIPP is on track to reach legal close by end of October 2023 and 2 further projects by December 2023. These projects will contribute an additional 424 megawatts once completed. 3 more projects from bid window number 5 are on track to reach commercial close by end of November 2023, representing 300 megawatts. House Chairperson, through the social compact established between government, business, and labor, we have activated a partnership with Energy Council and developed support programs that include, amongst others, strengthening the open cycle gas turbine diesel supply chain logistics, planning and efficiency, and optimizing load factors at peaking stations of Ankerleg and Gorikwa, overseeing and supporting the ESCOM team with the Kusile duct recovery and power station support, and the deployment of support teams to priority power stations, namely Matla, Kriel, Majuba, Kusile, Kendal, and Tutuga. Madam House Chair, honorable members, while some have chosen to use the challenges we face to play petty politics, even to the extent of mounting a legal challenge to the establishment of the ministry, and yet others making every effort to frustrate the work that we've been able to register at Kusile, we remain committed to sparing no effort to build an energy complex that is the backbone of our energy security and economic growth and development objectives. Whereas our immediate focus has been on short term to reduce the intensity and regularity of load shedding, We have not been oblivious to the long-term policy directives and infrastructure investment funding decisions requires to grow and modernizing our transmission infrastructure. Madam Speaker, House Chair, it is estimated that more than 390 billion will be required over the next decade to meet the demand for grid capacity, largely due to the increase in generation capacity through renewable energy projects following the various bid windows. To this extent, the Ministry of Electricity has hosted a transmission financing seminar working together with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to ensure that we are able to accelerate the financing and the rollout of a new transmission capacity to accommodate the new generation complex of the South African energy ecosystem. House Chair, the recent crisis of a 6 weeks outage in the Tsobotla local municipality is emblematic of the structural weaknesses in the electricity distribution industry. Municipalities are owing Eskom over 64 billion rands, and this is increasing year on year, of year to date about 4.7 billion rands. We are working with the various stakeholders, including SALGA and Eskom, to ensure that we address the issues of illegal connection, to ensure the issues of overload, address the issues of vandalism of distribution assets, and ensure that we are able to restore the integrity of the grid going into the future. We are working on ensuring that we reform the distribution industry. In this regards, we are making the following intervention to ensure that the future of municipal revenue in the context of revenue migration due to increase behind the meter, small scale embedded generation project uptake is receiving attention. Address the funding and project management of investments required to strengthen and expand and modernize the distribution infrastructure to support growth and link to this the future architecture of electricity distribution in the current constitutional directives, and address the policy and regulatory certainty regarding the feed-in tariffs and the wheeling agreements. And to this end, the wheeling agreement framework is sitting with NERSA. House Chair, I want to indicate that on the back of this crisis, we want to industrialize. For every crisis, there's an opportunity, and we want to take the opportunity within the life of this crisis. We are going to industrialize on the back of this crisis, ensure that we create the much needed jobs, ensure that we increase the size of the National Revenue Fund, ensure that we introduce new skills, and ensure that there's a technology transfer in order to ensure that the just energy transition realizes the characteristics of the South African definition of what constitutes a just energy crisis. As I conclude, I must indicate that the recently released census statistics indicate that access to electricity has increased significantly from 58.1% in 1996 to 94.7% in 2022. As we continue the work of ending load shedding, we must also focus on closing the gap for the remaining 6% for whom the load shedding stage has no meaning. As I conclude, I wish to thank the critical mass of Eskom's committed, competent, and patriotic men and women who do all they can to restore the credibility and integrity of our utility. As I would like to thank NICOM team, industry stakeholders, organized business and labor movement, all of whom have offered their constructive inputs and continue to play a part in ending load shedding and achieving South Africa's energy security. Indeed, to restate the words of O.R. Tambo, the future is bright, the end is glorious, it is peaceful. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable members. Order, honorable members. I believe every party is represented in these comments that will be made after the statement. Can we allow that? Honorable Graham.
Thank you, Speaker. It's easy to see why Minister Ramokgopa has been nominated for a further award as the Socialite of the Year. He is most certainly the most likable minister in cabinet with his friendly demeanor and charming grin. And he must also be acknowledged for his ongoing briefings on the energy crisis as the head of NICOM. It has been a refreshing change to have a minister who is willing to engage on a regular basis and provide feedback on a crisis that has had devastating effects on our country. That being said, however, affability and a winning smile is not going to resolve the energy crisis. And despite Dr. Ramokgopa's immutable optimism, neither is this government if things do not take a radical turn. The Energy Action Plan is over a year old. Minister Ramokgopa's appointment was made over 17 months ago. And this year we have, 7 months ago, I apologize. And this year we have experienced the worst period of load shedding in our country's history. We panicked there too. The recent decrease in stages with several days of load shedding suspended has been gratefully received, especially by Proteas and Springbok fans. But isn't it sad that as a nation, we feel blessed that we all had the electricity so that we could collectively watch our national teams shooting the lights out? But while we bask in the current load shedding holiday, we must not become complacent. Our energy crisis has not been solved. It has merely been temporarily stayed. And there is a huge amount of work that lies ahead to not only develop a stable, efficient, and cost-effective energy sector, but also to ensure that it complies with our climate change objectives to meet the just energy transition undertakings we've entered into and to which we are bound. Kusile naturally has been both the major cause of the crisis over the last 12 months and has conversely been the reason for the alleviation of load shedding recently. The power station, having already cost us 250 billion rand to build, has been bedeviled by corruption, design flaws, and mismanagement, and as we know, at one stage was not generating a single kilowatt. While units 1 and 3 have been brought back online after their spectacular failure last year, this has been a temporary repair, costing us 250 million rand. The repairs effected have bypassed the desulfurization process in a bid to bring them online earlier to address load shedding. And while the addition of 1,600 megawatts to the grid is definitely worth celebrating, there is a dark side to the expediting of repairs. The shortcuts taken to bring Kusile back online will see a massive increase in pollution and emissions, with the potential impact being around 680 deaths and 3,000 asthma emergencies in surrounding communities. A catastrophically high price to pay for electricity. It is clear that despite the Energy Action Plan having identified a number of key priorities for the short, medium, and long term, government has continued to suffer from myopia coupled with inertia. As Minister Ramokgopa sings in perfect harmony with Minister Gwedi Mantashe from the coal industry song sheet, he attempts to drown out the noise from the renewable sector. Sadly, both he and Minister Mantashe, in their stubborn refusal to deviate from a coal-based energy system, are missing the enormous opportunities offered by a mixed energy solution, which incorporates a balance of renewable energy sources to supplement our existing energy supply. He's also missing out on around $11 billion. Introducing renewables to the energy mix does not mean that we shut down the coal sector, that we fire miners and pray for wind and sunny days. What it means is that we begin to address the peaking issues we face by supplementing the existing power supply with renewables. And as technology improves, stability increases, and our energy system stabilizes, we proceed with a just energy transition from dirty energy to clean power. By following a rational, balanced approach that recognizes our energy needs, our labor needs, and our financial constraints, we can return to having a world-class energy system. If you think that is not possible, I can assure you that it is. You need only to look to the Western Cape to see what can be done when you have political will, consensus on outcome, and a plan with actionable targets and realistic timeframes. While the national government, including Minister Ramokgopa, continue to speak about ideas, the Western Cape is implementing them. While the ANC provide endless constraints and barriers to addressing the energy crisis, the Western Cape are providing solutions. The ANC government continue to cite grid constraints as a barrier to entry for the many independent power producers who are ready to bring renewable energy online, particularly in the Western, Eastern, and Northern Capes. The cost to increase the grid by the requisite 14,000 kilometers is estimated now at 390 billion rand. On the other hand, the three Capes are the center of renewable energy development, with the Northern Cape currently providing 60% of renewable energy in Southern Africa. It is also important to highlight that Eskom has not brought a single kilowatt of renewable energy into the system this year. All 4,700 megawatts of renewable energy have been brought online by rooftop solar installed by private individuals and businesses. The DA-led Western Cape, recognizing that Eskom is unable to address the crisis, has developed an energy resilience program which is twofold. It firstly addresses the impacts of load shedding on businesses and citizens, and then secondly, looks to facilitate a lower level of reliance on Eskom. Part of this program includes a new energy generation program, as well as a network development program coupled with demand-side management. Premier Alan Winde and his team have taken the system that they were given and made it work. The government as a whole has adopted an approach that has seen schools, municipalities, and provincial health invest in rooftop solar. Programs have been designed around small-scale embedded generation, feed-in tariffs, and wheeling frameworks under the Green Economy Ecosystem Support Program. And not only is this paying dividends during load shedding, with the city of Cape Town at least one stage lower than the rest of the country, it is also putting the Western Cape on a long-term trajectory that will see it far ahead of the rest of South Africa in terms of energy stability and security. And yet, the minister has failed to meet with the ad hoc committee on energy in the Western Cape no less than 3 times. Surely this is a time when we should all be collaborating, Minister, to solve the crises that we face, unless that is not what the ANC want to do. It is growing increasingly apparent, in fact, that the ANC government want to patch and repair whatever they can in order to control load shedding until the election. They have no real long-term strategy for the benefit of this country. Instead, they are following a short-term appeasement of their constituents, and nowhere is this more evident than in the fact that we still do not have an updated integrated resource plan. No plan, no accountability. It is very clear, particularly in light of the Western Cape successes, that the only party with a plan to rescue South Africa from the energy crisis is the Democratic Alliance. Roll on 2024. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, the next speaker is the Honorable Mkhwebane, and it's a maiden speech.
Thank you, Chairperson CIC Malema, Chief Whip of the EFF, Chairperson of the EFF. We take this opportunity to reiterate the condemnation of the genocidal violence that is being meted out by apartheid Israel over the people of Palestine. The people of South Africa, the continent, African continent, to the world must know that the warmongering colonial settler apartheid state that is waging the war in Palestine is not the biblical state of Israel, but a group of bloodthirsty, racist, and colonial invaders who are supported by the imperialist West, particularly the US, the UK, the Western Europe. Now coming back to the statement by the Minister of Electricity on how load shedding will be reduced. It is not the first time that the political leaders from the ruling party have made commitments about load shedding, and there is still no believability and credibility in their statements. And it is not the first
Honorable
time
Mkhwebane,
in more than one.
Honorable Mkhwebane, please take your seat. Honorable members, I indicated that this is a maiden speech. And the gestures that you are showing there are not the gestures that we have in our rules. We don't have such. Honorable members, please. This house is too small for you to make such noise. Proceed, Honorable Mkhwebane.
In more than one occasion over the last 5 years, the president of the ANC has assured the people of South Africa that load shedding will be things of the past and things just got worse. At the beginning of this year, the Secretary General of the ruling party said load shedding will end before December 2023, and there are no scientific and engineering demonstrations and evidence and signs that load shedding will end under this government. Despite the many assurances given by this minister, who oddly does not have a dedicated committee to report to here in Parliament, load shedding will remain and will get worse as long as the ANC is still in power. The EFF's roadmap to electricity dependability articulated by the CIC Julius Malema and Deputy President Floyd Shibambu are the only solutions that will end load shedding in South Africa. It is illusionary for anyone to think that and believe that you can end load shedding without securing base load electricity generation and supply, which in this instance is coal, nuclear, hydroelectricity, and conversion of gas into electricity. At the center of South Africa's electricity problem and crisis are the independent power producers who are imposed in our country by the imperialist West and forced into Eskom without any rational and sensible basis. We have to expose the hypocrisy of the West, who instruct us to close down our coal power stations when millions of tons of coal are leaving South Africa every day to go build and bolster Western and Eastern economic giants, creating ghost towns, perpetuating unemployment and poverty. We accept that electricity generation must not destroy the environment, but we cannot close down electricity generation without viable and concept-proven sources of electricity. Electricity that is harvested from the sun and wind is inherently and therefore not reliable. It can be used as off-grid solution, not as a long-term electricity solution for South Africa. That is why the proposal and submission of the EFF, that is specialized conditional grant to assist municipalities off-grid solution, must be given due consideration. The efforts of the EFF in sourcing base load electricity on what can illuminate into BOT build operator transfer contracts is the best model that must be replicated the whole of South Africa. Eskom must, as a matter of agency, seek to extend Quebec nuclear power license for an additional 20 years and must consider a BOT model for additional nuclear energy, which remain the cheapest for electricity in South Africa. South Africa must accept that in the foreseeable future, there is no electricity solution that can exclude coal as a source of energy. If anything, we should invest in coal clean technologies. We as the EFF will, during the course of November 2023, finalize the action plan on what are we going to do when we take over government from May 2024 onwards. We are aware that as part of the ruling party's election strategy, for 2024, they will go around making empty promises and commitments on things they know they cannot deliver. The people of South Africa must know that it is not only the EFF working within the best interest of the country. We have Black professionals in the energy sector who will end load shedding in South Africa. The rest of the political parties are just talking and electioneering. People are suffering, people are losing work, employment is high, businesses are destroyed because of this issue of electricity. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Yeah, House Chair, you can reintroduce the speaker.
Honorable, thank you. We may proceed. Honorable members on the virtual platform, I'm making this request for you to visit your gadget wherever you are and switch it off, mute it, please. You are disturbing the proceedings in the House.
Especially Hope.
Just a reintroduction.
Honorable Ngola, please don't do that. You repeat that, you will be out of the platform. Honorable Slangwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. I think at the outset, Minister, whilst none of us doubt your bona fides and your commitment to the work at hand and the responsibilities before you, you seem to have been given a poison chalice. You are a minister for all intents and purposes without a portfolio, departmentless, entityless, just a minister in the presidency. Cannot reign over any of the policy matters to the extent to which would be desirable for what you want to do. Now, that poses a problem, given the complexities around Eskom, not just to its own ability to generate electricity as it should, but you've got law enforcement challenges as well. The cabals that are involved, if you're looking at what happens in coal trucking and the diesel space, that is a problem. If you look at the consequence management challenges which prevail at Eskom, you've got no jurisdiction over that as well. You are stuck between the rock and the hard place, Minister Kodan and Minister Mantashe. These problems, Minister, will really stall any of your endeavors. I'm glad Minister Chris is in the house today, because you need to have conversations with her about flexibility in the environmental laws perspectives to ensure that we are able to arrive where we want to arrive. So the question then becomes, Minister, what is it that is your function other than the weekly press briefings, which I suppose are important for the dissemination of information, and then of course you visiting these power stations? I don't think any justice has been done for yourself in order for you to actually go the whole 9 yards. And that is the conversation we should be having. Because ordinarily, the interventions of the tax breaks that have been introduced, the more people get off grid, the less demand there is obviously for Eskom, and therefore a load shedding is bound to, reduce. But at the same time, there is a heightened level of difficulty for businesses and households, particularly those who are poor. The previously disadvantaged of our communities find themselves having to bear the brutal brunt of the economic hardships that arise out of load shedding. That being said, then it means that the interventions which are currently in place of the solar panels and the tax breaks are for the rich. We continue to widen the inequality gap in a society that is already struggling. It therefore begs the question as to whether this is a sustainable intervention or we are going to end up seeing more of the same, having been down this road since 2008. The facts speak for themselves. Eskom is in trouble. Eskom is operating on the basis of bailouts. There is policy uncertainty, leadership uncertainty, leadership interference going on at Eskom. The CEO left, the CEO has been unable to be, vacancy has not been filled. The chairperson of the board has resigned. The operations of Eskom, amongst others, are dependent on the functionality of other SOEs such as Transnet. There's problems in that space as well. So, Minister, as you present your plans as noble as they are and you seek to build up hope in South Africans, I would really implore on you to implore on the president, and maybe we can assist you here. He needs to give you a better deal than just making you a public spokesperson who's got no powers functions to the extent to which is required for the predicament at hand. I thank you.
Thank you. Akhbaralid Vessels.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. House Chairperson, in Afrikaans, we will call the Minister a beeldpoetser, because that is what he is. He is trying to actually create something that there isn't and trying to mitigate the crisis that is out there. What is always astounding, House Chairperson, is how excited the ruling party gets about little progress, or call it success, made in addressing a crisis created by themselves. You can't be excited about it. You created this crisis. The minister is correct. Eskom is in a dark, dark hole. But who dug the hole? And I'll tell you why it's important to identify the origin of the problem. South Africans have suffered a cumulative 64 days of blackouts during 2023 up until now. Are the strides made that the minister spoke about now sustainable? The energy availability factor is still below 60%. So the answer is no. Because if it was not for the much lower demand in electricity and the 1,100 megawatts procured by Eskom from the private sector, it would have not been a situation where we would have had less load shedding. It is clear that the reduction in load shedding is only temporary. And it is concerned because we saw this in 2008 as well, when there was load shedding, and then just before the elections, strides were made. All of a sudden, there is enough electricity. Is there? Or are you just doing this for an election campaign? And after the 2024 election, we are going to suffer even more because you did this in 2008. as well. Addressing the electricity shortage should be a sustainable solution through deregulation and enabling a competitive market for generation and distribution. The Minister is also correct when he refers to the contribution of failed municipalities to this crisis. But what is the solution? We heard all the plans to address the outstanding debt many years before. The previous Deputy President, now current President, announced plans in this House to reduce the outstanding debt. The opposite happened. Now we hear a lot of words, which I don't know if the Minister himself understands what he said the plan is, because I don't think anybody do. But none of those words are the actual solution to the problem. What is going to happen with the outstanding debt to Eskom? The people out there are suffering. Go to the people of Ngwate and tell them your plan, whilst they don't even have water because of load reduction. Load reduction that is additional to the scheduled load shedding. The root cause of the problems at Eskom was a lack of accountability and the corruption that was allowed. Policy decisions to sustainably end the electricity crisis is needed, and those policy decisions should be made and based on the realities of our electricity shortage and not on political ideologies. We need accountability and consequences, and I think everybody would agree. And that is why it's important to address, to admit to the origin of the problem, because otherwise we can't sustainably end the energy crisis. And then you have to admit that you were the cause of the problem. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, ongoing load shedding has had a devastating impact on households, livelihoods, businesses, and the economy as a whole. And last week, SARS Commissioner, Mr. Edward Kisveta said the energy crisis may have cost the country 150 billion rand. And this will probably be more fully ventilated in next week's medium-term budget policy statement. Now, Honourable Minister, we as the ACDP participated in the Eskom parliamentary inquiry, so we know the root cause, and a lot of that was admitted in the Zondo Commission, where the ANC took responsibility for a lot of that state capture and corruption. However, we appreciate your update. We appreciate the fact that you are confident that South Africa has turned the corner and that we're beginning to see sustained improved performance over an extended period of time. And yes, this last while we have seen an improvement, and we are grateful for that. This is good news. The challenge is, of course, how long can it last? And there is a saying, benode katte maak benode spronge, which means when there is a crisis, that one jumps around trying to resolve that crisis with elections looming. However, when you also look at the statement and at the improved performance, one has to look at what Eskom's group executive for transmission, Mr. Skeepers, has said, where he sketches the different scenarios of the 14,500 megawatts, 16,000 megawatts, and 17,500 megawatts. And that's the three unplanned loss scenarios with the different load shedding that would one then apply at each of those scenarios. And on the most optimistic scenario, that would be load shed level 4 at 14,500 megawatts scenario. Now, the problem with both Eskom and the minister's positive scenario is that the unplanned losses, that is, as the word suggests, it's unplanned and unforeseeable, particularly as we've got the aging and the unpredictable fleet of power stations. However, when you look at the facts, Minister, this week, yes, the breakdowns were at 13,500 megawatts, which is promising because this best scenario was 14,500 and planned maintenance was at 4,700 megawatts of generation capacity, which means that maintenance is continuing. So the ACDP, we welcome the fact of the additional units from Kusuli and Medupi, but we are mindful of the health issues as well. I think, Minister, we need to be very mindful of that as well. And so we trust, from our perspective, that you do succeed and that we have lasting energy, because that is for the common interest of all South Africans. Maybe just conclude to say we continue as the ACDP to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, in the knowledge that the Lord who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. And that is the modern state of Israel. I thank you.
Thank you. ATM. Do we have anyone on the platform? None. The Honorable Heron.
Thank you, House Chair, and thank you, Minister, for the progress report, which we appreciate, and we must acknowledge some of the progress that you have reported. But we must also do so in the context, as we've just heard, of a country that has lost, according to SARS Commissioner, the 150 billion rand to our economy. And this is in a country, Minister, where, and on a continent with an abundant supply of renewable energy sources, solar, wind, hydro, and for us to be in this situation where we are failing to implement renewable energy at a pace that is consistent with how renewable energy has been introduced in other parts of the world as a fast solution for generation capacity is deeply concerning. We must also remember, Minister, that there is apparently a planned or a potential breakdown of 13,500 megawatts of energy production, and then the planned maintenance of 4,700 megawatts. So we have a grid that is potentially 18,000 megawatts at risk. And of course, this will impact lives, livelihoods, education, health and safety, and our already fragile economy. At the end of the day, Minister, we have two problems. We have both a capacity creation problem and a transmission capacity problem. And what we needed to hear was what the short and medium-term solutions are to address both the capacity generation problem and the transmission capacity problem. There was at one point a promise to acquire 1,000 megawatts of energy from Mozambique, which would be a fast solution and also a testament to African unity. But then the Mozambican government told the world that they were still waiting for plans from South Africa on how to implement this. And we didn't hear anything about whether the Mozambican deal is still on the cards and how that will alleviate our current capacity generation crisis. We also have the car power ship controversial project hanging over our head. And the car power ship project is not only tainted with controversy around the nature of the deal, but also the environmental impact authorizations that have gone with it. And according to the Eskom Generation Capacity Assessment Report, the car power ship projects are currently, to some extent, reserving 1,220 megawatts of energy that caused us, or caused the bid window 6 to be unable to release that capacity for wind generation. And so we do need a solution to what was
Honorable Heron.
It was presented as a short-term solution that is not yet materialized, and we simply don't know when car power ships will come online, if they ever will. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Sheikima.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Allow me to welcome the statement by the Minister, and of course, let me also welcome and congratulate you on some progress, which we could all actually see physically on the ground, where we are beginning to, I think, enter a normal working environment. So yes, indeed, I think some progress has been made. Allow me also to condemn with the contempt it deserves the Zionist apartheid Israel's action, which resulted in over 5,000 people being killed, including over 64% of children. Not forgetting the statement that has been made by many Jewish Israelis that they were killed not by Hamas, but killed by the own Israeli Defense Force, who came there and attacked them while Hamas was treating them with kindness and taking care of them. So we must condemn this with the contempt it deserves and pray to the Almighty God. He brings peace and stability to Palestine, which has existed since for over thousands of years, while Zionism only came into existence just over 100 years. Now, Minister, I like some of the things that you have said. However, I was hoping that you were going to talk about the high levels of corruption, the subcontractors, the sabotage that takes place, not forgetting the evergreen contracts that are about 30 or some odd years old at this point in time, and how you actually dealing with it. There has been some progress in that regard, but very limited in terms of that, not forgetting the diesel, of course, as well. Now, Minister, I'm not sure if you're going to agree with what Minister Mantashe said, and I'm in agreement with that we cannot take South Africa from one extreme, which is coal, to renewable energy. We do not have the luxury of ample sunlight and or wind, whether we're talking about solar or wind energy. We must have a mix of both. South Africa has, I am told, about 300 years of excess coal available, which is being exported and a lot of profits coming in. Remember, the United States is talking about 2050 to get rid of coal completely. France has just recommissioned. China is building one every week. I'm not sure why we are so much in a hurry when we do not have an alternative. So I was hoping there will be a mix of renewable energy and coal, because we have ample supplies of coal. That, I think, might be able to sort our problems out. Now, remember the impact that this has had, Minister, even on SARS, with the Minister making it very clear, which you'll hear next week, the revenue, the decline in revenue. And what is the reason for this? Because businesses have shut down. Businesses have cut down their working hours, which means the revenue has come down, taxes that were being paid.
Honorable Sheikh Imam,
Thank you very
your
much.
time is up. Thank you. Honorable Jafta.
We have been monitoring the work of the Minister of Electricity since the Energy Action Plan was proclaimed by the President a year ago. We have specifically paid attention to the following elementary aspects: the procurement of new generation capacity from the renewable gas and battery storage.
Honorable Jafta.
Hello.
Honorable Jafta, do you have your earphones on? If you can remove your earphones, you are not very audible. Please. And then you may proceed. Are you okay?
Am I audible?
Yes.
We are traveling
No,
in Northern Cape. So we must therefore record that the Energy Action Plan will not, as a stand-alone, rescue ESCOM. There are structural policy and financial concessions that are too important to ignore. Firstly, the Energy Action Plan must exist in a sound energy policy framework. We note in this regard that the decommissioning of Komati power station was decommissioning. Komati now is several renewable programs, including projects to build 150 watts of power of solar power, 70 megawatts of wind power, and battery capacity of 150 megawatts. This is welcome. Secondly, the Energy Action Plan must be predicated on improving ESCOM's liquidity. This will help the utility company to service its debt and attract concessional loans from investors. Lastly, there must be a concerted effort to open up the space for private investment in large-scale electricity generation projects. Honorable Chair, in relation to short-term, medium to medium-term intervention, we wish to advise the Minister of Electricity to focus on working tirelessly to secure deals for additional megawatts of green energy, working with municipalities to settle unpaid bill of 57 billion owed to ESCOM, constantly engaging with the Accelerating Coal Transition Fund in order to secure additional concession funding, and audit power station warehouse to quality assure and risk assess the performance of this station. In closing, Honorable Chair, we wish the Minister well and hope he will turn the tide at ESCOM. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Motlhomphehi Relwate.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Honorable Chair, first I would like to welcome the report from the Minister as it shows some signs of good things to come if anything goes by the statement. But it is also important for us to mention that we all know where our crisis on energy emanates. As all South Africans know that somewhere some people have been responsible to put the country where it is today. And it's a sad situation that no progress has been made as yet to hold those responsible accountable. Minister has flagged some hope in the achievement on progress made. We hope that this progress is genuine and is putting our country on a path to recovery. The Minister in the statement has mentioned a disturbing situation of municipalities that continue to default on their payments. But what is missing is that we don't hear what steps are being taken, because this has been a continuous utterance about municipalities that are not meeting their obligations. We would urge the Minister to speak to the Minister's colleagues in Cabinet that certain steps must be taken and drastic steps should be taken to make the municipalities to meet their obligations. Because we cannot expect that ordinary South Africans should be held and should be bound to pay their municipal bills, and yet the very institutions themselves, they fail to meet their obligations. We welcome the Minister and we welcome the speech by the Minister, and so far we wish that this is the right step that would take us somewhere so that there's hope and there's prosperity in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is the PAC not?
It's not speaking, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The Al-Jama. Thank you. The Honorable Makata.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and greetings to all honorable members. Chairperson, even if the Minister was here to declare that there will be no load shedding again, we will still have parts, because people are just obsessed with opposition. That's the role of the right wing in this house. The frequency of load shedding has engendered not only dissatisfaction, but also a great discomfort in many. Even more disheartening is the fact that many of the dissatisfied citizens of our relatively new democracy have begun to view the bygone era of apartheid colonialism with nostalgia and some support for its return, all thanks to the intensity of load shedding. If left unchecked, this dissatisfaction and discomfort will eventually create a spirit of revolt in this country. This diagnosis suggests that some drastic action is needed to halt load shedding indefinitely. To this end, the ANC-led government has implemented the Energy Action Plan on the one hand and appointed the minister in the presidency responsible for electricity on the other hand as an effective means to confront load shedding head on. While opposition parties might quickly distort the action undertaken by the Minister of Electricity as total solutions or to end load shedding as outlined in the Energy Action Plan, my intention in this debate is to present a fairly accurate version of the truth. I must admit in advance that the version of the truth I will be sharing is more likely to be completely unfamiliar to most South Africans since it is often not described in any helpful way by the biased mass media they consume. The intention of the biased mass media is simple to convey the misconception that the ANC-led government has no answer to load shedding, while our internal media spokesperson, the DA, continue doing that. However, I will attempt to replace this misconception with fact-based information and describe the reality behind it. No one, not least opposition parties or the mass media, has ever applauded the success of the Minister of Electricity in improving the available generation capacity during the past 6 months. Eskom's available generation capacity has witnessed a magnitude of improvement from approximately 27,410 megawatts in May 2023 to 30,189 megawatts in September 2023, thereby effectively reducing load shedding from stage 6 to stage 2. To be sure, Kusile Unit 1 and 3 were brought back into the grid, adding much needed 1,600 megawatts, which improved the available generation capacity. It must be noted that Kusile Unit 3 was brought back earlier than planned, thereby implying that the Minister of Electricity, working together with Eskom, is on the right path to reduce and ultimately end load shedding. The tendency of opposition parties and their mass media to notice the bad more than the good about the ANC-led government has distracted us from the reality. The current lack of knowledge about fundamental Eskom's available generation capacity is therefore the most concerning challenge of all. Despite fundamental improvement in Eskom's available generation capacity over the past 6 months, the country still witnessed higher stages of load shedding in September 2024. No wonder South Africans were stressed and gloomy at this time, as they thought load shedding was getting worse than better. However, that's not true, we're talking nonsense. However, the basic facts about the highest stages of load shedding in September 2021 are so little known. The deeper cause of the higher stages of load shedding in September 2023 was not a direct consequence of Eskom's precarious financial situation, which compelled the utility to refrain from using diesel-dependent open-cycle gas turbines to offset the peak demands, as opposition parties and the biased mass media, which are convinced that the ANC-led government cannot run a sound fiscal policy, would like us to believe. The deeper cause of the higher stages of load shedding in September 2023 was, by and large, triggered by Eskom's ramped up reliable maintenance. If this ramped up reliable maintenance, higher stages of load shedding were inevitable with an implicit assumption that once maintenance was achieved and the units were returned to the grid, load shedding reduction will follow. Put differently, the cost of ramped up maintenance was higher stages of load shedding in the short run, but the benefits outweighed the cost of medium to long term. Just to illustrate, Eskom's unplanned capability loss factor and megawatts at risk have been declined in September relative to May 2023. The key point is that load shedding reduction is an automatic byproduct of ramped up reliability maintenance. That is the reason why the ramped up maintenance in September 2023 resulted in Eskom's improved generation fleet performance and emergency reserve recovery, which in turn reduced stages of load shedding from 6 to 1 in October 2023. I hope this picture is crystal clear. I also hope this picture is inspiring and comforting as it shows that the Minister of Electricity has become much more better at implementing the Energy Action Plan and getting Eskom help where it is needed. Of course, opposition parties are more likely to call me an optimist because I can highlight enormous progress they know nothing about. Calling me an optimist makes me looks like naive. I am not optimistic, but I am a possibilitist. Let me highlight my favorite point here. Ramped up reliability maintenance has enabled Eskom to rely less on diesel-dependent open cycle gas turbines, which are costly to maintain much the peak demand. Eskom is saving lots of money because of this. I can say this tremendous progress with confidence, even though stories about how Eskom is saving lots of money due to its less reliance on diesel-dependent open cycle gas turbines really makes the front page. Rare made the front page, but Eskom is confronted with a challenge encounter in its endeavor to conduct ramped up reliability maintenance consistently. Under recovery of cost, infrastructure vandalism, electricity theft, and increasing municipal debt have serious implications for the financial position of Eskom. Specifically, under recovery of cost, infrastructure vandalism, electricity theft, and the increasing municipal debt result in a revenue shortfall, which is covered by the government transfers. Consequently, ramped up maintenance and investment activities are cut back to make ends meet, which starves Eskom of funds to expand the transmission network by 325%, which in turn not only cuts the quality of service to existing customers, but also makes it difficult to bring new generation capacity from renewable energy technologies onto the grid. Unless these issues are resolved urgently, ending load shedding indefinitely will remain elusive. To this end, there are multiple municipal debt interventions implemented by the ANC-led government. For instance, there are 28 payment arrangements in place, of which 11 were honored while 7 were partially honored as of May 2023. In addition, there are municipal debt relief packages in place, of which 5 were approved by the National Treasury as of July 2023. Going through, the ANC-led government is aware that cost-reflective tariffs, which are the prerequisite for raising the capital necessary to meet the investment requirements, are likely to increase poverty and inequality level in South Africa. However, basic electricity subsidies that must be targeted so that poor policies.
Okay, honorable member, your time is up. Enough. Thank you. May I now invite the Honorable Minister to respond to the comments made by parties.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Maybe just to make the point.
Honorable Minister, please. Honorable members, I always say this room is too small. I can't hear what you are saying there. I can hear clearly as a belief. Rakela phambili baba.
No, thanks, House Chair. Just to make the point that a number of reputable institutions, including amongst other states, SA and the South African Reserve Bank has done a robust modeling that tries to understand the implication of load shedding on the South African economy. And they've arrived at the conclusion that about 1,600 megawatts of unserviced energy can result into the economy contracting by about 5%, and that costs the South African economy up to 1 billion rands a day. So we do have a full appreciation of the amount of injury and harm that is inflicted by load shedding on the South African economy. And the point I'm trying to make is that it is a height of folly to suggest that there's a relationship between the speed at which we want to resolve load shedding and the electoral prospects. What we are trying to do is to protect the South African economy, and we know that the manifestations of that is also on the fiscal headspace. So we're running out of fiscal runway, and that's why the Minister of Finance has to do some degree of reprioritization to ensure that we remain within the fiscal envelope. And then the second part is what Honorable Mkhwebane has raised. He says, my presentation is devoid of science. Perhaps you might have missed it, and I give you the benefit of doubt. So there's an irrefutable body of evidence that establish a degree of causality between the amount of emissions and also the occurrence of extreme weather conditions, what we call climate change. And we know that has got devastating and disproportionate impact on the poor. We're seeing it in the Western Cape, we're seeing it in KZN and parts of the Northwest. So what is the point I'm making is that the need for us to decarbonize is about the preservation of our own interest and also posterity. And that's why I agree with the Honorable Shaik when he makes a point. It's not about the polarization of the conversation. It's not a binary choice. We must do both. So just to Honorable Graham, there is no country in the world whose economy is solely powered by renewable energy sources. The renewable energy sources are predicated on the existence of a base load, which is coal, gas, nuclear, and then hydro. So it thrives on the redundancy of base load. And just to Honorable Hlengwa, my presence here is not ornamental. One of the major successes that we have registered was to make the point that the idea of decommissioning the coal-fired power station at the rate, the cadence that was suggested is essentially ill-informed. There's a need for us to delay the decommissioning as we resolve the energy deficit and also ensure that we do some degree of modeling to determine what is the impact of that decision. And that's why we're able to provide a degree of relief that we are seeing currently in the performance of the grid. And then also just to say that we're taking a holistic approach, so we're looking at the entire value chain of the energy ecosystem in the country. So the focus is not only on the generation side. You know, there's a significant amount of reform where we have liberalized the generation side. There's an aggressive appetite demonstrated by private sector players and an insatiable appetite. There's a pipeline of about 66 gigawatts of projects that are at various stages of the project life cycle. We're also focusing on the transmission side. And that's why earlier on, I said that we are looking at the various options to see how best can we finance the expansion of the transmission, because we'll need upwards of 300 billion rand. And that is going to enable us to accommodate new renewable generation capacity from renewable energy sources. And as part of the work that I'm doing, there's work stream number 6 of the National Energy Crisis Committee that is focused on addressing the issues of corruption, the issues of fraud. And that's why we've been able to register a significant amount of investigations, over 1,000 investigations, over 100 arrests, and over 50 prosecutions that have been made in this regard. So I really want to conclude by saying that we have turned the corner, but we are not necessarily out of the woods. And that's why I'm saying we need to accelerate our efforts working across government. We're working with the provincial government here in the Western Cape, Premier Linde, together with other premiers, because this is a whole of government approach, a whole of country approach, and that's why we're going to defeat load shedding. And I'm confident about our ability to resolve load shedding and ensure energy security for South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable members, that concludes the response to the statements. I'm now going to ask the secretary to read the first order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Transport on Railway Safety Bill.
Thank you. May I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party?
I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Noted EFF. Any other? We note the EFF and the motion is thus agreed to. Can we read the second order?
Second reading debate, Railway Safety Bill.
Thank you very much. This being a second reading, I will ask the Deputy Minister of Transport to open the debate.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Good afternoon, honorable members, colleagues, and fellow South Africans. The Rail Safety Regulator has been in existence as a fully fledged independent institution since 2005. And in the process of implementing legislation, they face challenges in performing certain functions which needed clarity in the Principal Act. The National Rail Safety Regulator Act was last amended in 2009, and since then there have been major developments in the country, as such that massive rolling stock investment programs and the introduction of the first standard gauge railway system in the country. All these developments were not anticipated during the amendment of the existing National Road Safety Act. The department conducted a rail safety regulatory gap analysis study, which highlighted legislative gaps in the existing act. The gap analysis study's main recommendations were that there is a need to review the existing act in order to address some of the identified gaps, such as lack of proper clarity of the role of the various players within the rail safety environment, duplication of power of the CEO and board, lack of independence between occurrence investigations and safety inspections, absence of proper framework regulating safety, critical grades employees, and lack of proper appeal mechanism process. The National Development Plan, recognizing specific strategic objectives which are related to public transport and are intended to improve the life of the general public. One of the key objectives of the National Development Plan is the establishment of an effective, safe, and affordable public transport by 2030. The bill therefore seeks to repeal the National Rail Safety Regulator Act of 2002, Act number 16 of 2002. The National Rail Safety Regulator Act established the Railway Safety Regulator, which I will further call RSR, to oversee and promote safe railway operations through appropriate support, monitoring, and enforcement guided by an enabling regulatory framework. The Railway Safety Bill complements rail revitalization as part of the implementation of the National Rail Policy. The bill also seeks to improve the regulatory framework regulating railway safety in the Republic in order to improve the safety of passengers and freight. The bill seeks to repeal the National Railway Safety Regulator Act of 2002, as I said earlier on. The bill does retain a couple of elements of the Act, endeavoring to provide greater clarity on several issues, and introduces new concepts designed to enhance railway safety. The bill places emphasis on railway safety and recognizes operators' role in managing the implementing safety measures, with the RSR promoting safety and ensuring compliance with such measures. The bill also provides guidance on the governance of the RSR, seeks to remove perceived conflicts of interest, and to provide a flexible framework for managing railway safety. In addition, it proposes that the RSR must oversee a framework of safety critical grades. House Chairperson, the Railway Safety Bill brings more clarity to the regulatory framework for railway safety in the Republic and is aligned to the White Paper on National Rail Policy approved by Cabinet in March 2022. The Railway Safety Bill was passed, if passed. The Railway Safety Bill was passed, if passed, will be instrumental in the implementation of the private sector participation in the rail sector. The third-party access seekers will have to provide with safety permits in order to operate in the rail network. It is therefore, House Chairperson and honorable members, critical that this House considers and approve this bill and support it to the National Council of Provinces. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you, GM. The chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Transport, Mam Lesoma.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, fellow South Africans, honorable members, ministers and deputy ministers in the House, and officials. Honorable House Chair, the Railway Safety Bill is presented to the House for its second reading with a report of the Portfolio Committee on Transport tabled and approved by the committee for this House for consideration and adoption. Classified, Honorable House Chair, classified by the Joint Taking Mechanism, which is JTM, as Section 75, as the Honorable Deputy Minister has alluded, reports the bill with amendments, which is termed as B7A of 2021, was referred to the Portfolio Committee of Transport on the 19th of September of March 2021. The ANC government's policy is to ensure that there is a restoration of rail infrastructure and modernization of the rail to ensure an efficient commuter and freight rail service in the country. Honorable House Chair, fellow South Africans, South Africans, we are indeed encouraged that the report of the Portfolio Committee of Transport on Railway Safety Bill, dated 19 September 2023, was approved and adopted for the National Assembly and support to allow the Honorable President to assent. The bill seeks to provide the following: for the regulation of the railway safety in the Republic, provide the continued existence of the railway safety regulator, provide the board and governance structures of the railway safety regulation, as well as for the rail safety permits and railway safety critical grades and safety management systems thereof. It also further provides for a national railway safety information and monitoring system, provide legal framework to enhance and ensure there is safety information and monitoring system, which will be provided and provides the legal framework to enhance compliance with the Act and to deal with the railway occurrences. Further, and not the least, provide for the appeal mechanism that will ensure that transitional arrangement of the bill for the National Rail Safety Regulator of 2002. Honorable House Chair, it's worth noting that the majority of the amendments that are incorporated in the bill are directly informed by the stakeholders' consultative public hearings, written and oral submissions thereof. That makes it very explicit in terms of the administrative and cosmetic and explanatory amendments that we have made and realigning of some of the clauses, Honorable House Chair, to ensure that definitions and governance structures and systems are clearer and explicit. The Republic has to maintain the best global practice in terms of the safety, ensure its legislation keeps abreast with international developments for the rail safety. The aims and the objectives of the bill, or the object of the bill, continue in that tradition of upholding the highest possibility or possible safety standard. It must keep abreast with the revitalization and modernization of the rail infrastructure and operations thereof, even transformation of the human capital in terms of skills and capabilities. As the rail infrastructure recovers and operational tempo of the freight and commuter rail increases, rail safety are both a necessity and critical part of increase the rail operations. The operation efficiency, Honorable House Chair and fellow South Africans of the rail in the country is dependent on the rail safety. Honorable House Chair, peace within the families of the world will not be possible until Palestine are free. Honorable House Chair, we table the report of the Portfolio Committee on Transport and Rail Safety for the House consideration. I thank you.
Thank you. Mhlonishwa Mabena.
I won. The time has lost the rail. Ngiyathokoza Sihlalo. The Railway Safety Bill is an encouraging piece of legislation, mainly because the opposition in the committee, especially the DA, has invested so much sweat equity in ensuring that the legislation produced by the committee and that has our names attached to it at least makes sense, is coherent, futuristic, and mostly has a positive impact on many stakeholders. The DA played a crucial role throughout the life cycle of this bill. From its inception, it was the DA through Dr. Chris Hansinger who initiated the motion of desirability and was very instrumental, particularly concerning the expansion of the railway network's user base. We have successfully broadened the scope, not only in terms of users, but also in content. This achievement has laid a strong foundation, effectively paving the way for prospective concession holders. Moreover, it has opened up new possibilities for devolution of railway services to competent local authorities such as the Western Cape Provincial Government and the City of Cape Town Metro, to name a few. This is indeed significant progress that cannot be ignored. The foundation for future devolution of railway services is firmly laid. This bill, as it stands, encompasses all future stakeholders and participants in our railway infrastructure under one unified regulation and regulator. By doing so, we have established a comprehensive framework that ensures seamless collaboration and standardized practices within the industry. This significant step forward not only guarantees regulatory efficiency, but also fosters an environment conducive to sustainable growth and innovation, benefiting both present and future players in the railway sector. This is the influence of the opposition on this bill. The bill essentially introduces a new regulator and regulation of users of railway network. Contained in the bill is also the emphasis and focus on railway safety and the recognition of operators' roles in managing and implementing safety measures, with the railway safety regulator promoting safety and ensuring compliance with such measures. Honorable Chairperson, other aspects that the bill addresses is the provision of guidance of the governance of the railway safety regulator and an attempt to address concerns raised over time by operators in respect of the system of railway safety in South Africa. There were also inherent risks which were identified in relation to governance, and this bill makes a spirited attempt in legislation to remove perceived conflicts of interest and to promote a flexible framework to managing railway safety. However, the taste of the pudding is definitely in the eating, because this ANC government has continuously failed at implementation. Even though the ANC only has 7 months left in government, you wouldn't be surprised if you fumble this one as well. This bill also proposes that the railway safety regulator must oversee a framework of safety critical grades. We are of the view that this is very important to ensure seamless harmonization within the sector and establish standardized practices endorsed by the whole industry. Honorable Chairperson, in conclusion, the committee conducted public hearings in all 9 provinces from the 19th of November 2022 to the 23rd of April 2023. To gather the opinions of communities on the bill, these hearings were, in my opinion, the most chaotic in terms of parliamentary administration. Let me provide some context. For example, during one of the public hearings we attended in Boksburg in Gauteng, the parliamentary mobilization team failed to properly inform and prepare the public. It appeared that an instruction was given to what committees in that region to attend the meeting under false pretenses. They were misled into believing that the discussion would involve their stipends, cell phone allowance, and the possibility of being employed by the city on a semi-formal basis. In nearly all the public hearings, attendants came expecting the committee to address issues related to the reinstatement of trains rather than discussing the railway safety bill. This situation exemplifies incompetence, ineptitude, and a complete lack of accountability. It is a chaotic situation resulting from a lack of decisive leadership. Another notable instance of disorder occurred in Velkom, Free State. During the first leg of public hearings on March 17, 2023, fewer than 5 people arrived at that public hearing. This was mainly due to the incompetence and laziness on the part of the parliamentary support staff, who seemed to have joined the event as if they were on a holiday trip and neglected their responsibilities. The meeting was a complete failure and had to be abandoned. As per the communication from the committee secretary, Ms. Valerie Karelse, as she put the blame on this mess on the Parliamentary Public Education Unit or Department for their failure to mobilize and workshop the relevant stakeholders and the public. Colleagues were unhappy and scheduled an impromptu meeting and penned this letter. They penned this letter to House Chairperson Cedric Frolik, and I want to read an excerpt from this letter. As a portfolio committee at a meeting held on the 17th of March at 5 p.m. Southern Sun Hotel, Bloemfontein, we took a decision to request a comprehensive report from the committee secretariat on what led to this failure, on which we deem an embarrassment to the integrity of the committee. The secretary will be given 7 days to present this report to the committee, with a meeting to be scheduled thereafter to receive a presentation on same. The Portfolio Committee on Transport, but in true ANC style, the committee was simply ignored, and this letter has not been responded to, even though we gave the secretary 7 days to respond to this letter. To date, we have not received any feedback on our letter to House Chairperson Cedric Frolik, and we have not received a comprehensive expenditure details from the secretary of the committee regarding this wasteful expenditure, which runs into the hundreds of thousands of rands. This expenditure includes the cost for hotel stays, transportation of members of parliament, transportation of stakeholders, flights, live broadcasting, translation services, catering, and more. Yet, this issue remains unresolved. Taxpayers' money going down the drain, and there is a complete lack of shame and non-accountability and no consequence management. This describes how the legislature under the Speaker, Umama Onosiviwe Ngagula, has deteriorated completely, and the oversight authority of Parliament has been undermined. Also, there's a new chairperson in the committee, and these issues have not been addressed to date. Honorable House Chairperson, that describes the ANC government. Our hard work went into this bill. As such, we're going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Tito.
Thanks, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, South Africa's railway system has completely collapsed under the ANC government. Residents in Soweto, Thokoza, Langa, Gugulet, Umlas, and other townships once enjoyed functional railway transport today.
Honorable members, please order.
Today, those railway tracks lie dormant, overgrown with grass. It's a sad reality that while some may believe that railway tracks will still exist, our citizens, driven by hunger, have taken them to the scrapyards. Beyond the Prasa project, where we learned that the trains were too long and didn't fit, there are hardly any trains carrying passengers in South Africa as we speak today. The few trains that are operational suffer from poor maintenance and subpar safety standards. The only trains that run efficiently and safely with clean stations are those that transport domestic workers into predominantly white suburbs like Cape Town, Stellenbosch, and in Gqeberha. As the EFF, we actively participated in the formulation of this bill in the committee and public hearings nationwide, where we heard the pleas of our people demanding the restoration of their railway. Due to the lack of reliable and affordable public transport, people are compelled to rely on taxis. Some of these taxis aren't even roadworthy. Wages that should go to feeding families are instead spent on transportation. And as petrol prices rise, so do taxi fares, further burdening our citizens. The Economic Freedom Fighters stand as the only organization with a credible transport plan in South Africa, one that integrates road, rail, and air transport to benefit both our people and the economy. Many concerns were raised during the public hearings. They were not addressed in the bill. We highlighted these oversights during committee meetings, and it became apparent that there is no genuine intention to address the issues our people are facing. We are conscious that the push for public transport reforms, especially in railways, is driven by the National Treasury's privatization agenda. The National Treasury's Vulindlela program indeed champions the privatization of railway services. This very agenda underscores the need for railway safety reforms and the establishment of a regulator. Network operators, after all, will oversee the operation, construction, and maintenance of the railways. The privatization efforts are already evident with the commercialization of Transnet ports and the harbors. It's imperative that we reconstruct a railway system that isn't solely focused on transporting minerals from inland mines to harbors or ferrying workers from townships. We envision a regional and continental integrated transport system. We must move beyond the confines of a neo-colonial railway system. We envision high-speed trains connecting Johannesburg to Beitbridge and beyond, from Johannesburg to the coast of KwaZulu-Natal and from Johannesburg to Cape Town via Bloemfontein and Kimberley. Such a system could not only ensure safety, but also position railway as the most efficient mode of transport for our people. We, as the Economic Freedom Fighters, we have abstained on the bill in the committee. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Chole.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The persistence declared of railway safety regulation is a clear indication of a more profound issue in our country, a lack of concern for the well-being of our citizens. Additionally, the absence of legislation for railway safety permits and a national railway safety information and monitoring system underscore the government stagnations addressed critical matters. The IFP repeatedly addressed this House, highlighting the deteriorating state of our railway infrastructure, including daily bridge collapses that endanger the lives of our citizens. It is essential to recognize that the failure in various government departments are interconnected and extrapolate each other's. For instance, the improvement individually is done by the government often end up leaving laneway tracks, jeopardizing their safety and dignity. This grim reality underscore the humanizing impact of poverty. In addition to addressing the underlying socio-economic issues that push people such disparate situations, I propose the recruitment and training of security personnel stationed at railways around the clocks. This measure not only ensure passenger safety, but also contribute to combating the pervasive criminal activities citizens enjoy. Imposing stricter penalties for those who damage public infrastructure will better further act of vandalism and crime against public property. This proposed bill aligns with our party long-standing concern. If amended and fully implemented, it will greatly benefit South Africans by ensuring diverse board representations, including individually from railway industry, organized labor, and communities. Critically, it is established that criminal railway safety grades and safety management system and hold operator accountable for not reporting a railway accident, potentially leading to their conviction for any offense. Now let's incorporate additional information about railway safety. Railway infrastructure maintenance, regular maintenance and inspection of railway infrastructure, including bridges, tracks, and signing system are crucial for preventing accident and ensuring passenger safety. Safety education and awareness. Public awareness campaigns and safety education programs should be implemented to inform the public about the danger of trespassing on railways tracks and the importance of following safety regulations. Security measures, enhanced security measures such as surveillance cameras can better vandalism, trespassing, and other criminal activities along railways. Collaboration with communities, engaging with local communities to address their concern, involve them in railway safety initiative can help build environment. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, I express my doubt about the actual implementation of this bill provision, as I believe that the government lacks the essential quality of leadership, merit, and selfness required to see it through. Sadly, it appears that our peers will continue to fall on deaf ears. The IFP supported the bill.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable May. The Honorable May. The Honorable Swartz.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the amendments to the Railway Safety Bill aim to enhance the regulatory framework governing railway safety in South Africa. It repeals the National Railway Safety Regulator Act. Now, the Railway Safety Regulator oversees railway safety, as the name suggests, conducts audits and inspections, and investigates accidents and incidents related to the railways. If one has regard for the annual State of Rail Safety Report, this unveils a disconcerting reality. A huge amount, 97% of security-related incidents are due to theft and vandalism, which paint a grim scenario of a situation which appears to be spiraling out of control. The recent taxi strikes in the Western Cape in early August highlight the potential of trains as a viable alternative source of transport for commuters. However, myriad issues such as malfunctioning signaling equipment, compromised infrastructure security, and damaged telecommunication cables have crippled its effectiveness. Recognizing this, the Railway Safety Regulator is doing its very best to address these challenges, and this bill will go a long way, in our view, to enhance the railway safety and to improve governance and other issues as set out in the bill. The amendments must also, however, be seen against severe challenges faced by other users of our railways, such as Transnet. Now, the ACDP is deeply concerned at the continuing deterioration of Transnet's infrastructure and performance, which, as we know, threatens the entire economy. Now, we've had a discussion about Eskom, but the challenge at Transnet may eclipse that of Eskom, given that the economy is heavily reliant on efficient logistics, as 68% of the country's GDP comes from imports and exports. It is conservatively estimated that the country is losing a staggering 1 billion rand a day from Transnet's collapse. Now, it's interesting. The Minister of Electricity referred to 1 billion rand a day being lost through Eskom. Transnet is at the same level almost. And this does not include lost potential investment from local and international companies. International companies do not want to invest if they know there's a risk that will be unable to export their products or transport them to the end consumer. Transnet's collapse also results in additional strain being placed on the country's road infrastructure. And the ACDP fully supports the road to rail projects. But mining companies and fruit exporters are turning to trucking to transport their goods. It is critical then that the crisis as Transnet is solved without delay, as it presents a great challenge to the country's economy. The ACDP will support this bill as it goes a long way to improve railway safety. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. ATM. The Honourable Heron.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, South Africa used to have what was regarded as the best railway system in Africa, but this transport sector is now a shell of its former self. Corruption, mismanagement, and an organized crime syndicate targeting copper and scrappable metals or materials are the root causes of the railway's deterioration, and why for the most areas in the country, rail travel has earned the stigma of an unsafe and unreliable transport solution. Today, safety is at the forefront of our modern rail projects such as Gautrain and the newer Elstrom trains in the Western Cape Metro Rail system. And rail transport is making a massive comeback globally as a mode of transport, with many countries with more advanced economies attempting to shift back to rail after an over-reliance on air transport. While this is great as a solution to cut greenhouse gas emissions, this has never been the case for South Africa, as flights are not a realistic form of transportation for the vast majority of our people. The role of this new law is not only to boost safety of rail, but also to ensure a new standard for rail throughout the country. In addition, the new safety laws boost accountability in the sector with a new reporting system for injuries, collisions, and other breakdowns in the rail system. The key part of this is its ability to hold contractors and subcontractors accountable. This is a step in the right direction towards a future where corruption and poor services are far easier to spot and subsequently report. House Chair, rail is the future of this country, and it will be vital if we are to address or offer a solution to those citizens who are disadvantaged by their geolocation and improve their access to reliable and affordable transport. Once this gap is reduced, the economic impact of a safe and reliable railway system will be felt throughout our country like never before. We will support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Sheikh.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Yes, indeed, the National Freedom Party notes the report tabled here, and that the committee has deliberated, had public hearings, and we are quite satisfied that due processes have been followed. The National Freedom Party will support this bill. Now, Chairperson, and yes, I must admit that I think some of my colleagues are absolutely correct when they talk about an efficient rail system that we once enjoyed in this country. And if you couple that with the damage that is being done to the road infrastructure in the absence of an efficient railway system, it's costing the country a lot of money, but not only costing the country a lot of money, it's costing the country a lot of lives. Now, another thing I think that we need to look very seriously into it. Is there a deliberate attempt in the country by anyone to destroy our railway system? And I think it's something that we're going to need to look at very seriously in the future, because the levels of theft and vandalism and the threat that that poses, I think must be taken more seriously. I mean, we've been having a lot of arrests, but still no end to the crisis or the problem we face. Communities have moved on to the railway tracks, which is making it very difficult to roll this out countrywide. But indeed, as the NFP, we believe that if we've had an efficient railway system in the country, and given the high cost of travel, particularly by flights and now bus transport companies are taking advantage of that, an efficient railway system will, I think, to a very large extent motivate people to want to use the services. So I think it's something that we must support. It's very progressive by nature. There's no doubt about it. The NFP is quite satisfied having considered all the different points in the report that indeed we are in good hands and we are supporting this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Vessels.
Thank you, House
What's your point
Chairperson.
of order?
Not a point of order, Chairperson. Apologies. The Honourable Mayor has re-established connectivity. If you would be so kind to allow him opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Do we have Hope? PAC? Al Jamal. Honorable May, it's your opportunity.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've got a problem, so I'm not going to use my video. Die wetsontwerp is 'n groot verbetering op vorige wetgewing. Railway safety is concerned with the protection of life and property through regulation management and technology development of all forms of rail transportation. Die doel van die Railway Safety Bill is in die verbetering van algemene veiligheid binne die spoorwegomgewing en om te verseker dat spoorvervoer weer 'n aantreklike opsie is en kan bydra tot die ekonomiese ontwikkeling. Spoorvrag staar 'n krisis van operasionele doeltreffendheid in die gesig wat negatiewe gevolge op ons ekonomie het. Vermindering van spoorkapasiteit het Suid-Afrika verhoed om voordeel te trek uit die huidige prysstygings van ons kommuniteite in Suid-Afrika. In die verlede was die spoorweë verantwoordelik vir landbou en nywerheidsontwikkeling. Ons sit egter vandag met 'n omgekeerde probleem. Die landboubedryf en nywerhede groei, maar sukkel met die vervoer van hul produkte na en van hawens omrede ons spoorstelsel so versleg het. Die wetsontwerp lê ook baie klem op opleiding wat baie belangrik is. Daar word vereis dat goed opgeleide persone kritieke take moet kan uitvoer, soos om in beheer te wees van 'n lokomotief, die veilige beweging van treine, installering van onderdele en veiligheid van persone wat op die spoorlyne werk. Openbare verhore is in al 9 die provinsies gehou en is goed bygewoon deur die publiek. Die insette het 'n groot rol gespeel en bygedra tot sekere wysigings in die wetsontwerp. Van die belangrikste insette is die dat oorgange nie veilig is nie en onbewaak gelaat word. Kinders het maklike toegang tot die spoorlyne omrede daar nie behoorlike heininge is nie en dikwels is dit noodlottig. Treine staan vir ure op afgeleë plekke as gevolg van kabeldiefstal en geen water of kos is beskikbaar nie. Massas mense wat tegelykertyd die trein bestyg en sodoende vind beserings plaas. Die stasies is sonder water en die ablusieblokke buite werking. Al 9 die provinsies het spesifiek verwys na die veiligheid op stasies en in treine. In baie gevalle word passasiers op die perron of in die treine beroof. Misdadigers kom in groot groepe na die stasies en beroof passasiers van hulle eiendom. Die publiek het nie genoegsame vertroue in sekuriteitsbeamptes nie en wil die terugkeer van die Suid-Afrikaanse spoorwegpolisie op treine en stasies graag sien. Die vervalle spoorwegstasies moet herbou of opgeknap word om trots onder die passasiers te kweek. In baie gevalle is die stasies totaal afgebreek. Die verval van die spoorwegstelsel het daartoe bygedra dat padvervoer die rol van die spoorweë oorgeneem het. 'n Gebrek aan finansiering sal verhoed dat die spoorweë 'n te volle funksionele entiteit word. Ons in Suid-Afrika benodig veilige, betroubare en skoon treine. Dit kan slegs gebeur indien PRASA veiligheidsmaatreëls streng toepas. Die feit dat Transnet van mening verander het en nie meer die privaat sektor as vernoot wil gebruik nie, beteken dat ons ekonomie verder sal versleg. Die staat op sy eie kan nie die vervoerstelsel finansier nie. Die wetsontwerp kan 'n groot rol speel in die verbetering van ons vervoerstelsel, maar dan moet daar by die wetsontwerp gehou word en dit streng toegepas word. Dankie, voorsitter.
Thank you, Honorable May. The Honorable Ramadhan.
Ndo livhuwa muhulisei mulangadzulo. Kha vha ntendele ndi lumelise dziminista na mathusa minista vhane vha vha hone. Vahulisei miraḓo ya buthano ḽa lushaka. Lushaka lwa Afrika Tshipembe ndi ani resha ndi Mathabama. The African National Congress respect multi-party democracy. We believe that when we are in a portfolio committee working together with all political parties, we are a team. Ahuna na lihoro na lithihi line la nga amba uri ndi ḽone ḽo itaho uri mulayotibe hoyu une ra vha khawo u vhe hone. Mahoro haya a tshi vhona dzi TV a change a shanduka, a si ambe zwone, amba zwine vha nyaga u vhonwa nga vhathu. Lushaka vha khou ni fhura a si zwone zwe ra pfha na zwone, ro tou shuma roṱhe khathihi. House Chair, namusi ri khou amba nga mulayotibe wa tsireledzo kha vhuendi ha zwidimela. Vhunzhi ha mashango a ḽifhasi a na mulayo wa tsireledzo kha vhuendi ha zwidimela u itela uri vhaṋameli vha vhe vho tsireledzeaho. Riṋe sa Afrika Tshipembe a ro ngo fhambana na maṅwe mashango. Vhuendi ha tshidimela ndi ha ndeme vhukuma kha shango ḽashu, nahone vhu ḓo vha ha ndeme vhukuma ngauri hu khou vusuluswa na u khwinisa na u vhu vhea kha zwa zwino. House Chair, the country has a rail safety record second to none in the world, which should make all South Africans proud. This is based on the best international standards. The Rail Safety Bill brought before the House for second reading has been carefully processed and approved by the Portfolio Committee of Transport and seeks to deepen and entrench in legislation this rail safety record. The ANC support the Rail Safety Bill, but in supporting the bill, it is imperative that the people of our country understand the necessity for this legislation. While the country has had a rail safety regulator since 2002, this bill ensures that the rail safety regulator can better operate at this current conjuncture in the country. South Africa has an integrated rail network for the transport of people, goods, freight, and service. This means that it is utilized for both commuters and freight. Over the past 2 years, since the COVID-19 pandemic, rail transport has made a recovery in terms of infrastructure development and improvement of service. And this will further be based on the optimization of rail operations in the future. The ANC government policy is to ensure that working class and poor communities have access to an efficient and cheap railway public transport system. But it must be system based on the highest safety standards which the Rail Safety Bill provides for. It is also ANC government policy that the movement of goods and freight from road to rail will ensure greater efficiency in transporting goods and freight to reach the coast from inland markets for consumption or export. This is largely due to the extraordinary amount of heavy-duty trucks on the road, which has resulted in many road fatalities. The ANC is a caring government of the people, and no caring government can stand by and watch members of the community being victims of the road accident due to the volume of heavy-duty trucks on the road. Rail is a safer and cheaper alternative to transport people and goods. It is therefore critical that the country has a single legislative and regulatory framework for rail safety. The implementation of the new rail policy, which is based on the white paper on rail, envisages the optimization of the railway operations in the country. This will entail a more efficient commuter rail and freight service. It is more critical now with the recovery of rail infrastructure and rail service in terms of freight and commuter rail that the Rail Safety Bill is enacted and that the rail safety regulator can commence with the implementation of the legislation and is enabled through the bill to enforce rail safety. The bill therefore strengthens the role of the rail safety regulator and creates an appeal mechanism which didn't previously exist. More importantly, the bill seeks to protect communities residing near rail crossing to ensure that safety is adhered to and that there are no fatalities at such level crossings. Many rail corridors have been recovered and restored, and many more will be opened in this financial year. Increased operational tempo of the rail system in the country means that the rail safety regulator has its work cut out of it. However, it is important that the central line in the Western Cape is completely operational and the restoration of the rail service can be completed. A solution must be found for housing of people who are residing within the rail servitude. This is a rail safety hazard, and we expect the rail safety regulator to join the initiative to ensure that a solution is found for housing for those people. Critical to the process of rail safety bill are the objectives of the bill, to which the chair has spoken in introducing the legislation and the committee report to the House for the second reading of the bill. However, it is equally important to focus on the public participation processes and amendment to the bill, as this has particularly relevance to the rail safety regulator, the operators of rail, and the community. Hezwi zwi khou khwaṱhisedza uri hey railway safety bill ine namusi sa African National Congress ra khou I tikedza asi committee fhedzi yo itaho uri ive hone na dzi public hearings dze ra vha nadzo kha mavundu oṱhe a ṱahe vho amba nga mafhungo a hey bill ndi zwone zwine namusi ri khou tea uri ri tikedze ngauri asi zwa committee fhedzi. Unlike the apartheid era, Legislation in the democratic South Africa is also influenced and informed by public participation. Public participation informed many of the amendment of the bill, and therefore the bill has the imprints and contains the views from the public participation process. Honorable House Chair, through the public participation process, the Rail Safety Bill had amendment to the definition. The amendment to the bill also ensured that the board of the rail safety regulator can function even through the election of a board member to act in the capacity of the chairperson or deputy chairperson. The bill, through the amendment, provides for transparency in the work of the rail safety regulator by providing for publication of notices linked to the act in the government gazette, newspapers, and or regulator website. This will heighten public awareness of the issues which the rail safety regulator is dealing with, and when members of the public should commenting to ensure that the rail safety regulator is sensitive in the issue of the community concerning rail safety. The rail safety regulator, in terms of the bill, must process application from training institution, and this is an important source of skilling people to ensure that they are employable in the sector. Given the ANC government emphasis on education and skilling of people to empower people to enter different professions, provision has also been made as part of the amendment for allowing for institutions that is at the time of commencement of the act to continue providing training in critical grades of rail safety, while they have 3 months to register with the rail safety regulator. The bill was innovative in allowing for the regulator to determine the levels at which participation in the sector and ensures that communities affected by rail crossing can consult the regulator on ensuring proper safety standards. It also allows for industry experts, both local and international, to input specialist knowledge into the rail safety regulator so that technically informed decision can be made. The bill, through amendment, requires all operators involved in a railway occurrence to each conduct separate investigations of these incidents and furnishing such reports to the regulator. This is not optional, but compulsory, as the bill allows for operators which intentionally or negligently fail to report railway occurrences to possibility be found guilty of an offense. This gives the rail safety regulator the ability to act when necessary to enforce rail safety. The amendments were geared towards improving the overall effectiveness of the bill and ensure that the rail safety regulator can efficiently function based on the legislation before Parliament. More importantly, communities based near rail lines and infrastructure need to ensure that it informs the rail safety regulator of its needs and concern to ensure that people are able to cross rail lines safely, and that signaling and level crossing are functional. Members of the community will also be eligible to serve on the board of the rail safety regulator. The people and communities are more empowered by the bill. The opposition in the form of the DA needs to become more mature and constructive, as they were aware that this was a rail safety bill which encompasses different aspects and that didn't have any substantive issues, insisted that it should be rail safety and security bill. It should have been obvious to the DA that security is a component of rail safety, not just in South Africa, but globally. What this means is that when all operators submit their operation plans to the rail safety regulator, security of infrastructure, assets, and people will form a part of the plan for receiving a safety permit. This form a party which has the legal economic substance to offer the country except to build on minority fears. Increased rail operations and activity in commuter and freight rail is to ensure greater access to public transport for communities. Improved freight rail is geared towards inclusive economic growth and job creation. Therefore, improved rail activity must be accompanied by rail safety. We are following best international practice in terms of rail safety. The ANC support the rail safety bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, it is of critical importance that we hear and understand what a member on the podium is saying. We are aware that the translators were not functioning properly, but they are being attended to. I had very serious problems myself because I tried to listen to what the honorable member was saying. Somewhere she was talking about Shaka Zulu, but I could not understand what that has to do with the railway safety bill. So I'm just trying to emphasize the importance of making sure that our translators are working so that we are able to participate, all of us, in the debate. Thank you very much. The Deputy Minister will close the debate. The Honorable Deputy Minister of Transport.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I take this opportunity to appreciate and thank all honorable members for their contribution, for their inputs into this success passage of this bill. It's truly appreciated. And I think the comments made by a couple of members were a demonstration that this is indeed a just straightforward technical bill which seeks to improve the level of rail safety. So I'm sure that the House chairpersons would have taken note of Honorable Mabena's issues raised, and I hope that they will take them at the appropriate forums. However, in terms of the bill itself, it is an executive bill. It was introduced by the executive, and it cannot be close to the truth that it was an initiative of my colleague, Dr. Honorable Hunsinga, who has a lot of positive contribution, we must say. But we appreciate all the input of the colleagues. It's also clear and noted the issues that members have raised about the return of rail, which there is a lot of improvement in terms of rail services that are coming back. And the issue of cable theft that Honorable May talked about, level crossings, all those things that the department we have noted. We are taking serious appreciation of the issues you are raising, and they are being addressed. And surely at the portfolio committee level, we'll be able to account to yourselves as public reps as to what we are doing in all the areas that you have raised. Honorable members, House Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Railway Safety Bill, second reading.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Forestry, Fisheries and Environment on Climate Change Bill.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honorable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, I move that the report be adopted. Thank you.
Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Second reading debate, Climate Change Bill.
Thank you. I now invite the Honorable the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment to the podium.
House Chairperson, honorable members. This debate marks an important milestone in our common battle against climate change. Today, this House will complete the first stage in ensuring our country has a legal instrument to build resilience to the impacts of climate change and reduce emissions in a way that is appropriate to our national circumstances and development pathway. The sixth report on the International Panel on Climate Change shows us that the world is already dangerously close to an average temperature increase of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial times. We must move with speed to reduce carbon emissions, to limit the severity of climate change impacts. Simultaneously, we have to build and adapt and create resilience to the impacts that will occur, even in a 1.5 degree world. As you are aware, South Africa is a signatory to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and its Paris Agreement. The Climate Change Bill will enable the orderly reduction of greenhouse gas emissions through the implementation of sectoral emission targets to guide us on our journey to the mid-century net zero commitment in our National Development Plan. The bill will also ensure we reach our country's nationally determined contribution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by assigning individual enterprises carbon budgets and facilitating public disclosure of our progress. The bill provides impetus for mainstreaming our climate and disaster response by placing a legal obligation on every organ of state to coordinate and harmonize policies, plans, and programs to make sure climate change risks and associated vulnerabilities are acted upon by national, provincial, and local government. Because subnational governments already face financial shortfalls, the bill provides mechanisms for national government to provide additional support. Already, the department has mobilized finances to assist municipalities to prepare climate response strategies. We know climate change impacts will hit the most vulnerable communities first and will hit them hardest. A key part of building climate resilience is setting up early warning systems so that communities can prepare for disasters before they happen. According to the Global Commission on Adaptation, knowing that a natural disaster will occur 24 hours in advance can reduce damage by 30%. Our department and the South African Weather Service currently provide regular weather updates, and we have technology that can give South African communities advance warning of extreme weather events. Our fundraising efforts aim to improve existing infrastructure and replace outdated and dysfunctional systems. Responding to climate change is not the responsibility of government alone. Every aspect of society and the economy will be impacted upon, and consequently, the government will formally establish the Presidential Climate Commission as a statutory body to mobilize communities, organized labor, business, and civil society to represent a whole of society response to future challenges. Honourable members, last month, African leaders adopted the Nairobi Declaration on Climate Change and Call to Action, which recognizes that decarbonizing the global economy is an opportunity to contribute to shared prosperity on our continent. In support of this vision, President Ramaphosa at the United Nations Climate Summit called on developed countries to meet the need for new predictable public finance to support climate change adaptation and build resilience to loss and damage in developing countries, so that no country has to choose between development aspirations and climate change. With abundant solar and wind resources and significant reserves of critical minerals, South Africa is positioning itself to be a leader in renewable energy, green hydrogen, and sustainable industrialization. The Just Transition Framework developed by the Presidential Climate Commission aims to ensure that climate actions adhere to principles of procedural, restorative, and distributive justice. Consequently, as our country develops our vision of a just transition to a low-carbon economy and climate-resilient society, we will ensure it is sustainable, inclusive, comprehensive, and leaves no one behind. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Modise.
House Chairperson, good afternoon. Minister and Deputy Ministers, fellow South Africans. We gather here today to address a critical issue that stands at the intersection of environmental stewardship and effective governance. The impact of climate change transcends the boundaries of our traditional sectoral governance approaches, and it necessitates a nationally driven, coordinated, and cooperative legal and administrative response. South Africa is no stranger to the profound impacts of climate change, from prolonged droughts affecting our agricultural productivity to extreme weather events affecting our communities. Recognizing the need for a comprehensive response, the Climate Change Bill was introduced in Parliament in February 2022. This bill represents a significant step forward in shaping the legal framework to address climate change in our country. Since its introduction to Parliament, this bill has undergone an open, robust, and participatory process. The public hearings provided a platform for South Africans from all walks of life, from experts, civil society, businesses, and communities, to voice their concerns, share their experiences, and contribute to the formation of a comprehensive response to climate change. And these insights are highly appreciated. It is within this context and against this backdrop of public hearings and extensive deliberations that we discuss the unique challenges and critical opportunities that climate change presents to our government systems. As we move forward, we must appreciate the effective management of the inevitable impacts of climate change through the inputs of those who spoke in the public hearings. We have learned about the pressing need to improve adaptive capacity. It is not enough to merely react to climate change. We must prepare and adapt to it proactively. In doing so, we must build resilience within our communities, within our systems, and our economies. Our response strategy also encompasses strengthening resilience and reducing vulnerability to climate change. South Africa's diverse landscape and communities require targeted policies and actions to ensure that no one is left behind. To achieve this, we must bolster our infrastructure and invest in our people, ensuring that every South African has the opportunity to thrive in the face of climate change. In the context of South Africa's economic realities, we must also guarantee a fair transition towards a low carbon economy in society. It's a path that seeks to balance our economic growth and development in the imperative to reduce carbon emissions. During the public hearings, we had diverse perspectives on how best to achieve this balance, recognizing that our regions, our sectors and communities have varying needs and strengths. Let us also remember that South Africa carries international responsibilities and commitments on climate change. These obligations go hand in hand with our duty to our citizens, as the steps we take to mitigate climate change also impact on our international standing and relationships. Ensuring our compliance with these commitments is important, but it must be rooted in a nationally driven, coordinated and cooperative approach. We cannot ignore the ethical dimension of our response. Our environmental stewardship extends beyond our borders and into the future. We are the custodians of this planet and entrusted with its care for current and future generations. Our actions today will resonate throughout the lives of our children, our grandchildren, and beyond. Through the Climate Change Bill, we are working to fulfill this ethical obligation. As we navigate these challenges, it is important to acknowledge that addressing climate change comes with a cost. There are financial, social, and environmental costs. These are not insignificant, but they pale in comparison to the cost of inaction. The investment we make today, whether in terms of resources or effort, will safeguard our future economically, environmentally, and in terms of the human well-being. The journey to address climate change has been a participatory and an inclusive one, enriched by the voices of South Africans from all walks of life. The introduction of Climate Change Bill and the public hearings have marked a significant steps forward in shaping a comprehensive response to climate change. But let us be reminded that the journey is far from over. The bill still needs to proceed to the National Council of Provinces before it reaches the President's desk. It is within this context that I would like to take this opportunity to appreciate the diligence and the hard work of all members of the Portfolio Committee of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. For our committee, the path ahead involves continued work on service delivery and following up on the recommendations for Parliament. This includes improving parliamentary systems, enhancing public consultations, strengthening communications, initiating meaningful education and awareness programs, and enforcing environmental legislation, amongst other priorities. With the same level of dedication and collaboration demonstrated thus far, we can overcome environmental challenges and realize our vision for a sustainable and a resilient future. On behalf of the Portfolio Committee, we recommend that this House adopt the Climate Change Bill B9 of 2022 report. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Weber.
As Chairperson, President Ramaphosa and his cabinet started very bravely addressing climate change by approved climate actions. A presidential climate commission, South African low emissions development strategy, a national climate change adaptation strategy, carbon tax and just transition. This is only a tick box exercise. Like everything else, it is talked about and put on paper, and then a big nothing. No execution, no enforcement. The continuous turning of a blind eye to the atrocious lack of enforcement is unforgivable. No fines or jail sentence to Sasol and Eskom for not adhering to the minimum emissions and continuously put the health of their workers and others at risk due to the air pollution. The continuous extension granted to Sasol and Eskom to adhere to the minimum emissions is unacceptable. Obviously, the government is not taking air pollution seriously. No consequence to mines that spill acid mine drainage into our waterways that literally destroy the biodiversity that is so needed to balance the greenhouse effect. No consequences to industries pouring their toxic waste into our water. Illegal cutting of trees has a serious impact on the balance of the greenhouse effect. Trees needed to be replaced. Moving the responsibility of climate change to the local municipalities is a matter of great concern. With the history of the ANC and the mismanagement of local municipalities, which are mostly bankrupt or under administration, only one can wonder. There is no money in local municipalities for this new mandate being added to their responsibilities, and the promise of raising money through donations is concerning, as we know that financial discipline is not a hallmark of local government. It does work in the Western Cape as the DA there governs responsibly. The solution to climate change is not just a bill on paper, but the execution of your promises to renewable energy, better forestry management and sustainable agriculture, and adhering to the treaties we signed, as well as ensuring enforcement. Climate change cannot be addressed on paper unless climate change becomes climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, those who are most vulnerable socioeconomically bear the brunt of the impact of extreme weather patterns as witnessed in KwaZulu-Natal in 2022 and again more recently, buried in mudslides, drowning in floods. Yet they are part of a continent that is home to 18% of the world population, but contributing a mere 4% to the global emissions that leads to climate change. Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters agrees that South Africa needs to develop policies that will ensure that we respond effectively to mitigate climate change disasters in a manner that will lessen the impact on our citizens. But this government has failed to use the available mechanisms already in place. Given the inevitability of these climate-induced disasters, we need to have effective adaptation measures to climate change. These include improving our capacity to foresee disasters and climate fluctuations and developing measures to adapt to these. The ANC can't even keep the weather monitors functioning. We do not believe that this current ANC-led government possesses the wherewithal to respond adequately in event of climate disasters, to drive South Africa's transition to a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy that will enhance the country's ability and capacity over time to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Chairperson, the Portfolio Committee for Forestry, Fisheries and Environment was under pressure to finalize this bill, from a condensed public hearing schedule to finalizing the wording of the bill. The incentive to finalize this bill as fast as possible was the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, where the funding commitment was increased from $8.5 billion to $11.8 billion. The Just Energy Transition Investment Plan gives effect to the Just Energy Transition Partnership signed at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland 2 years ago. Wealthy developed nations are pledging $11.8 billion for South Africa to transition from coal-based energy generation to renewable energy. Wealthy nations have developed their economies using coal to the detriment of the environment. Developing nations now have to bear the brunt of that advancement and are told that they need to transition from carbon-based energy sources to renewable energy sources. According to the Just Transition Framework released by the Presidential Climate Commission in June 2022, South Africa will reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. We are concerned that the Climate Commission is centralizing the presidency, from the process of appointment to determinations of functions, potentially giving the Presidential Climate Commission super ministerial powers to dictate to other ministers. We need to ask why the developed world, which is largely responsible for the climate crisis we are facing, is so invested in dictating South Africa's development choices. South Africa is part of a continent that merely contributes 4% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and yet South Africa, with the rest of the continent, are being corralled to pay the highest price for the West development choices over the past few centuries. Fortunately, Chairperson, 2024 elections are around the corner, and we can assure South Africans that an EFF-led government will ensure that our wealth and natural resources is used in a climate-friendly way to create jobs and livelihoods. The EFF-led government will officially adopt the civil society-driven 1 million climate jobs initiative as a government program. Through this initiative, the EFF government will create 1 million jobs aimed at transitioning South Africa from coal-based energy sources to renewable energy. These 1 million jobs will have to meet certain criteria: decent jobs that are safe, economic development that is driven primarily by people and not profits. An EFF-led government will be actively involved in creating jobs that address climate change, employing and training new climate workers, and retraining workers where necessary. Workers must be given opportunities for retraining and re-employment in new climate-friendly sectors. A just transition means prioritizing the needs of working people in the social and economic disruptions that this transition will involve. An EFF government will ensure that development of these industries do not become an excuse for lowering wages and social benefits, and that these new jobs provide opportunities to redress gender imbalances in employment and in skills. We urge all South Africans who have witnessed the failure of the ANC government in dealing with climate disasters when the poor and the vulnerable are affected to register to vote for the only party that represents the poor and the vulnerable. The EFF does not support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, in the interest of future generations, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren, it's incumbent upon all of us to support this move and support this climate change bill as a stepping stone to ensure that we leave a universe for them when we depart from this earth. Climate change and its impacts is an issue of utmost importance. This topic has been at the forefront of our legislative agenda for the past 12 years, when a white paper highlighted our climate change challenges and the responses thereto. Today, Honorable Chair, we deliberate on legislation that has emerged, as we've heard from the Chairperson, from a thorough and inclusive public consultation process, and I want to express my sincere gratitude to the countless individuals and organizations who contributed to the development of this legislation after it was given to us by the Minister. Their dedication and expertise have shaped the bill we have before us today, and as a committee, it is incumbent upon us to acknowledge their input. Chairperson, while the core climate change issues remain unchanged, we have shifted towards implementing this legislation. To this end, we must ensure that all levels of government, mainly provincial and local, possess the necessary capacity to monitor and execute the interventions required to prevent possible future catastrophic events stemming from climate change. This remains a serious concern for us as the IFP as we move forward. Another issue that I wish to raise, Honorable Chairperson, is that funds must follow functions, and government must provide this House with the necessary assurances that this will be the case. We must allocate appropriate resources. Otherwise, this legislation will be nothing more than empty words on glossy paper. Another significant aspect of this legislation is the establishment of a Presidential Climate Commission. While the IFP initially had reservations about this provision, we have been assured by the Minister that there will be coordination and cooperation between the department and the Presidential Commission. The Commission will serve in an advisory capacity, ensuring that ultimate responsibility lies with the department. We support this approach and trust that it will lead to effective climate action, for we do not want a case of the tail wagging the dog. Honorable Chair, in our pursuit to combat climate change, engaging and empowering our youth is critical. I'm pleased to share that I visited during the public hearings and sought feedback from a group of young high school students, about 150 of them, at the Durban Girls College, representing a number of schools in that area. Their input provided valuable insights into their concerns and aspirations regarding climate change. We must encourage more activism and involvement from our youth, for they are the future generations as framed in Section 24 of the Constitution. It is also essential to address the underlying issues of greed that often fuels environmental degradation. We witness a relentless desire to develop every piece of land and produce energy without considering the long-term consequences. This profit above all mindset disregards the significant environmental impacts and is often overlooked by officials. It is imperative that we put a stop to this destructive behavior. We need robust legislation. And Honorable Chairperson and Minister, I don't think we need, again, to find that Kusila Power Station or any power station is allowed to exceed their emission standards because it impacts on communities in the area. We have to strike a balance between emissions and what is needed by the country. But in conclusion, let us end the greed and short-sightedness that have plagued us for too long. And I believe that together we can create a brighter and more sustainable future. Thank you. We will support this bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Briet.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, this bill can be looked at from both sides of the climate change debate. On the one hand, you might see it as an unnecessary burden on already challenging circumstances for businesses. And on the other, you can say that not enough is still being done to address the ever-increasing climate challenge countries are faced with. However, what all will most certainly agree on is that this bill is quite underwhelming, a poor compromise, if you will. Although the primary objectives of the bill are to facilitate the creation of an effective response to climate change and a long-term equitable transition to a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy and society in South Africa within the context of sustainable development, one must ask how achievable such objectives are. It is once again a piece of legislation that is reactive and almost tries to undo what has already been done instead of also being proactive and taking steps to ensure that risks are decreased in future. Questions that should also be asked, as with most other bills, are questions around the implementation thereof and whether what is entailed in the bill, its strategies and plans are practically feasible. Financial viability is also a matter that needs to be addressed because, let's face it, the fiscus has run out of money and has none to spare. And the sad truth is that issues of the environment often pull the shortest straw where matters of finance and resources are concerned. Whether there will also be the necessary political will remains to be seen. This bill has the potential to be just another bill that was introduced to create the illusion that we as a country are taking action.
Honorable Briet.
Yes, Chair.
Just a minute, sorry about that. Honorable members, could you please reduce your noise levels? Thank you. Can continue, Honorable Briet.
Thanks, Chair. This bill has the potential to be just another bill that was introduced to create the illusion that we are a country of action that is addressing greenhouse emissions and trying to decrease our carbon footprint. This worry is further highlighted by the formalizing into law of a presidential climate commission. The history of presidential commissions is dark. They all seem to fall dismally in their tasks and become bottomless pits that create hope for a short while before they are ultimately doomed. We don't need more empty promises. 'n Realiteit in Suid-Afrika is dat ons ongekende klimaatsomstandighede ervaar wat onder meer buitengewone meerjarige droogtes en meer gereelde ekstreme vloede tot gevolg het. Die studies is duidelik dat hierdie veranderende weerspatrone as gevolg van kweekhuisgasse is wat in die atmosfeer vasgevang word. Dit is duidelik dat daar verandering moet kom. Ek glo daar heers eerder verskillende menings oor hoe dit gedoen gaan word, eerder asof dit gedoen behoort te word. Suid-Afrikaners is nog altyd praktiese mense en soos hulle sê, 'n boer maak 'n plan. Sou ons dus nie eerder Suid-Afrikaners wil aanmoedig om buite die boks te dink en om ook oplossings te help het vir die probleem, eerder as om van die staat afhanklik vir oplossings te wees nie? Wat in ag geneem moet word, is dat wanneer aanmoedings gemaak word, die mens beter reageer as wanneer goed bloot net verbied word. Die vraag ontstaan dus of dit nie ook in hierdie debat die geval sou gewees het nie. Moet daar nie eerder aanmoedigings in die wetsontwerp vervat word om besighede en persone aan te moedig om 'n kleiner koolstofvoetspoor na te streef en te handhaaf nie? Maar ek sluit af. Die wetsontwerp is 'n halfgebakte poging van die regering om almal gelukkig te probeer hou en om die indruk te wek dat hy optree. Die vermindering van Suid-Afrika se koolstofvoetspoor gaan nie alleenlik deur die regering teweeggebring word nie, maar deur die kollektief van Suid-Afrika. Ek bedank u.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Thring.
Honorable House Chairperson, the ACDP notes that this bill seeks to develop an effective climate change response and a long-term just transition to a low-carbon economy. The ACDP commits to reducing harmful toxins and gases, to restoring our ecosystems, air and waterways that have been contaminated by pollutants. We commit to protecting our endangered wildlife, flora and fauna, because we understand that this is our inalienable mandate as custodians of our planet. What the ACDP will not commit to is the hypocrisy that the ruling party seems blind to. Much of the pressure to develop legislation regarding greenhouse gas emissions comes from the developed world, who during their periods of industrialization paid scant regard to our environment and still continue to emit the lion's share of pollutants. Now, they seek to negate the industrialization of developing nations by weaponizing the climate through legislation. The European Union, as an example, will introduce a carbon border adjustment mechanism, a carbon border tax on embedded greenhouse gas emissions of carbon-intensive products imported into the EU. Simultaneously, they ask South Africa to shut down coal-powered electricity stations, while hypocritically importing coal from South Africa at a rate of some 720% increase recently. 8.5 billion rand was pledged for the just energy transition in South Africa. To please the masters that pull the finance strings, the ruling party has decommissioned the Komati coal-fired power station, one of the most stable and efficient electricity power stations in South Africa, and that during load shedding. The United States has 220 coal-fired power stations. India has 285. China has 3,092 coal-fired power plants and built 2 coal power stations per week last year. South Africa has 14 coal-fired power stations. An energy crisis, high unemployment, poverty and inequality. This bill gives the minister almost unfettered power to, amongst others, make regulations in regards to the management of climate change. We must never succumb to the pressure of the unelected global elites like the World Economic Forum, who threaten another lockdown using climate change as a pretext. The ACDP calls on this House to place South Africans and the economy first. We must have a balanced energy mix using our abundant coal and fossil fuels for the benefit of the unemployed, the indigent amongst us, and do so responsibly using clean coal technology. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Heron.
Thank you, House Chair. Chair, the climate change issue is a generational justice issue. And the climate change bill is a commitment to the next generation of South Africans. The rapidly changing climate was once again revealed to us during the KwaZulu-Natal flooding last year. And most recently on the African continent, we were rocked through the tragic loss of 2,900 Moroccan citizens due to catastrophic earthquakes. These are not isolated incidents, but rather a small taste of the future once you factor in our country's challenges with rainfall, drought, violent storms, and rising heat. The seriousness of climate change cannot be underestimated or ignored, as science and research has already substantiated that the world cannot continue its current pace should we want human life and our environment to be sustainable. The climate change bill is a commitment to preventing a catastrophic future and ensuring that our country is not only able to protect human lives, but also that our government is fulfilling its role in protecting state assets, the economy, and the livelihoods from climate disasters. We want to acknowledge the 5,600 people from all over the country who gave feedback and added their input into this bill. This indicates that climate change is not a fringe issue, but will impact every single South African. The bill places a heavy emphasis on transparency and clear communication between government and the public, and this is an important and welcome aspect, as we have already seen prior cases where environmental concerns have been hidden from the public. Through the establishment of the Just Energy Transition Partnership, it is clear that many in the world have their eyes on our nation and on our commitment to cutting carbon emissions. And we must do everything that we can in order to meet our climate goals for 2030. We will support this bill.
Thank you very much, Honorable Heron. The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The National Freedom Party notes the report and will support the bill tabled here. But I want to talk about the irony of what we are discussing and debating today, Chairperson. We are talking about protection of human life. And we are raising concerns because of climate change, how it affects humanity and human beings. But let's look at the state of Palestine right now. After the barbaric Zionist Israel bombs Palestine, they block the entrances, so no food, no water, no electricity, nothing can be provided. Now, how barbaric can that be? Now, this is when we talk about humanity. On the one hand, we are talking about protecting human life. On the other hand, right in full view of us, there is the Zionist state of Israel in its unlawful occupation, committing atrocities to such an extent that it has catastrophic consequences to the lives of innocent people. And only mistake they make is they want their land back. But let me come back now to the issue of this climate change. Chairperson, many occasions I've raised in this particular house the plight of the people in Meerwent, Oosterwil, Lemontville, Jacobs, those areas that were affected by particularly by the high levels of emission. And I think I must agree with my colleague that spoke a short while ago. We seem to be paying a lot of attention to these high levels of emission and carbon and raising concern about our coal-fired power stations. But nobody is talking about those countries that's putting pressure on us, like the United States, France, Germany, who are building more and more, commissioning more, no hurry whatsoever to deal with this. Well, and China building every week, but nobody is raising concerns about that. So is this what it is really about? Global warming? Is this what it is about? Protecting the lives of innocent people? Or is this some selfish ideals of some country somewhere in the world? We cannot run away from the fact, yes, climate change is having an effect. There's no doubt, more earthquakes. You can see what's happening on the coastlines all over, earthquakes. We've got so much that's going on. But I think we also need to look deeper into this and not fall into a trap, particularly with countries who've got a hidden agenda. I think really seriously we need to look at The National Freedom Party, however, will support any initiative that will protect lives, and I hope we could be consistent with this. Let us also protect the lives of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. And let me thank the ANC government. Thank you for the role that you are playing in protecting the lives of ordinary Palestinians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Imam. The Honorable Winkler.
House Chair. Last year, in one of the worst floods of the century, a deluge was unleashed on KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. 459 people died, 12,000 houses were destroyed, and 40,000 people were forced from their homes. As Southern Africa braces for a possible 4-degree temperature increase, these catastrophes may become our reality. And herein lies the gravity of our National Climate Change Bill. This isn't just another piece of legislation. This is a lifeline. There are, however, insidious, unnatural forces at play which stand to undermine our country's climate change response. South Africa is the 14th largest emitter of carbon dioxide. This bleak reality is further marred by the revelations of mafia-like syndicates operating inside Eskom, allegedly involving top ANC politicians willing to commit the gravest of crimes to sustain the coal industry and stifle our shift to renewable energy. The Just Transition Energy Partnership, however, provides hope, not only availing a route to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, but highlighting our immense potential in wind and solar energy. We face stark choices. We must either decarbonize or risk being ostracized from international trade and suffer immeasurable job losses. What this is going to boil down to is financing, good governance, and political will. Minister Creasy, your greatest adversaries sit on your own ANC benches. Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe proudly and brazenly wears the badge of fossil fuel dinosaur, obstructing our path to green energy. The question remains, will you find the courage to stand up to the forces within your own party that seek not only to undermine the climate change bill, but the people of South Africa? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Winkler. The Honorable Mbata. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable Mbata.
Honorable Chair, honorable ministers and deputy ministers present, members of parliament, fellow South Africans, I greet you all in the name of climate change. The South African Cabinet approved major environmental initiatives such as establishment of a Presidential Climate Commission, South Africa's low emissions development strategy, the National Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, a carbon tax, and a just transition framework. The National Development Plan, which is the NDP, is a long-term development strategy aimed to lead and outline all policy and planning in the country through 2030. Chapter 5 of the NDP aimed to ensure that South Africa transitions to an environmentally sustainable, climate resilient, low carbon economy and equitable society by 2030. The bill intends to integrate the work of all 3 spheres of government in responding to climate change. It gives local government a broader responsibility when it comes to planning for climate change and reacting to local concerns. This will enable the revolution of the legal framework, the rapid deployment of renewable energy solutions across the country, and the growing importance of the national debate on just energy transitions create an ideal opportunity for South Africa to strengthen vertical and horizontal coordination and cooperation of unions and civil society for effective climate change response. Currently, municipalities are not the most common beneficiaries of climate change or of climate finance funds. However, the government is currently working on a national climate change finance strategy mandated by the Climate Change White Paper. The strategy focuses on attracting international funding and investment and clearly outlining the allocation of resources to support climate change. There are already some structures in place to facilitate access to climate change funds. The DFFE established the National Green Fund, which is administered by the Development Bank of South Africa, the DBSA. This is done to aid in the transition to a low carbon, resource efficient, and climate resilient development path that provides high impact economic, environmental, and social benefits. DPSA will be in a position to provide financial assistance through grants and loans and equity partnership agreements for green cities, towns. A low carbon economy, environmental and natural resource management, and other related projects will be covered by the DPSA.
I'm going to that.
The bill further seeks to strengthen the national climate change information system by encouraging local, provincial, and national government to use the National Climate Change Information System tool, which is the NCCIS tool. Circulating climate information across government is critical in ensuring vertical integration of climate change. The National Climate Finance Strategy should investigate measures to make climate finance more accessible to local governments and to strengthen their capacity to absorb funds once they are mobilized. The bill further encourages the adoption of the guidelines for a just energy transition. The National Planning Commission suggestions include a greater role for civil organizations in the governance of South Africa's equity energy transition. Investigate new roles for South African municipalities in the national energy transition. The energy environment is evolving, and local governments are increasingly questioning the current approach. Globally, alternative business models have emerged that could help South Africa's energy transition.
Honorable member, your time is up.
The ANC support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is from COPE. PAC. Al Jamal. The Honorable Brian.
Thank you. As a developing country, climate change poses a significant threat to our stability and our prosperity. But so does the economic catastrophe that would result from an overzealous rush to shut down coal-fired power stations too soon. 70% of South Africa's electricity currently comes from coal. We have entire towns built around the coal industry. But more than that, our energy security is, whether we like it or not, still heavily dependent on coal. That is why it's so important that we set out clearly how we will transition in a way that is both urgent and sensible. This is not merely a matter of acquiescing to international pressure. And while we support the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, South Africans should not be lectured by other countries, many of which have failed to implement the goals that they've set for themselves. We are a sovereign country and as such are empowered to chart our own transition. And at the heart of this must be the diversification of our energy mix. Solar energy, once panned by skeptics for being too expensive, is now the cheapest form of energy available on the market. And forward-thinking governments, such as in the DA-led Western Cape, have already begun taking groundbreaking steps to empower the private sector, as well as regular homeowners, to help roll out the most ambitious rooftop solar program in the country. This government must end its Marxist romance with the public ownership of industry and do all it can as quickly as possible to cut red tape and open up more opportunities for the private sector to invest in and grow green projects and green jobs across the country. In the midst of escalating global uncertainty, being able to generate our own green energy has never been more important to protect us from the weaponization of resources that we've seen in the Russia-Ukraine war and in the Middle East. As a country rich in natural and renewable resources, we must get back on the path towards energy independence. But we won't achieve this unless we open up as much space as possible for private investment. So what then should the role of government be? Well, for a start, setting out clear policy and legislation that helps guide the market. And this bill is a good start. Government should also be doing all it can to help build and support the new industries arising out of the transition towards green energy. We will also need to put urgent and demonstrable plans in place to avoid the tens of billions of rands of exports being jeopardized when the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism comes into play. Whether this bill succeeds in achieving what it sets out to do will rest heavily on two things, which thus far have proven to be elusive for this government. Firstly, a coherent and consistent position on climate change and renewable energy. It doesn't help having one minister spouting conspiracy theories about the CIA being behind climate change, while others are attempting to show the rest of the world that we are serious about tackling the issue. And secondly, as my colleagues mentioned, ensuring that our local and provincial governments are adequately capacitated to drive the climate change response. And this will pose a huge challenge in many areas. This bill is certainly not perfect, but it's an important step towards addressing one of the most significant challenges facing the world today. And I'd like to thank fellow members of the committee for their hard work on the bill and the Minister for agreeing to some of the amendments that were made by the DA. The DA supports this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Council.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members, greetings to Minister and Deputy Minister. Honorable Chair, science has made great progress in understanding climate change and its causes, and it is now contributing to a firm understanding of the current and potential consequences that will affect humans today and in the future. This bill supports and encourages measures that will greatly strengthen the body of reliable evidence based on numerous research outputs, that climate is changing and that these changes are being caused in large part by human activities. Honorable Chair, as people become more aware that climate change is occurring and poses serious threats to human, social, and environmental systems, there is a growing body of knowledge about technologies and policies that can be used to limit the magnitude of future climate change. A smaller
but growing understanding of steps that can be taken to adapt to climate change, and a growing recognition that climate change will need to be considered in actions and decisions across the wide range of sectors. The Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, in partnership with the Department of Research and Innovation, is already addressing these issues of responding to climate changes and the need to reduce emissions. The climate change related research and technology development investment should sustain, and progress towards the rolling plan should closely be monitored. According to reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the effects of global warming will be felt extremely in Africa, as we are feeling it now. These effects include strong storms along the coast and more frequent and intense fires and floods like those that we have experienced in many coastal areas. In order to foster resilience throughout society, the nation's national adaptation strategy emphasizes the necessity of integrating climate adaptation measures into planning and budgetary processes. Therefore, Honorable Chair, the adoption of this bill is important in responding ahead of the anticipated climate change. And it is not true that responding to a critical issue such as climate change with a legislative framework which does not overlap in any other legislative framework will risk the government's ability to able to effectively respond to natural disasters. In fact, it will compel the government to follow the legislative framework in addressing the climate change related issues. This bill, honorable members, is also raising awareness and hence comprehension of the consequences of climate change that will allow for behavioral change as well as social support for the activities required to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It can also help communities to adopt mitigation and adaptation measures that will lessen their vulnerability in climate change. The reaction to climate change presents a chance to examine how we may collaborate to more effectively end global threats of climate change. This bill will further enhance measures to improve energy efficiency, low carbon and non-carbon technologies, carbon reduction technologies, and carbon capture and storage technologies. Technological innovation will be necessary, but not sufficient. Therefore, managerial and institutional reforms are expected to even more important in dealing with climate change's multiple and unanticipated effects. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, the ANC seeks social reform in contemporary context in order to free our society from poverty and inequality for the benefit of the current and future generations by protecting and preserving the environment and its riches to continue sustaining generations to come. Honorable Chair, before I sit down, I just want to address my fellow members or colleagues. Honorable Weber, your plan works in Western Cape because it only serves minority, whilst the majority of our people are suffering here in Western Cape, if I may say. Honorable person, Neeman, this is not the time for cheap political grandstanding. We are dealing with a very serious matter that is affecting our people in South Africa negatively. And you are busy campaigning. This is not the time for campaigning. So Tibane grounding. I can be your campaigning. So Tibane grounding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment is invited to the podium.
House Chair, let me begin by thanking all the honorable members who have participated in this debate today. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the 5,500 people and organizations who participated in the public hearings on this bill and shaped the product that we will adopt this afternoon. Let me thank the Portfolio Committee for steering this process with so much dedication and professionalism. Science tells us that climate change is real and a threat to our collective future. Developmental economics tells us that the climate transition will only succeed if we can address the triple conundrum of energy security, energy access, and environmental sustainability. This government's commitment to fundamental socio-economic transformation demands that the climate transition must be just for the global South in relation to the global North, just for future generations, just for those who are most vulnerable and living in poverty. It must create new local industries that offer new forms of ownership and prosperity. And above all, it must create new jobs. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? Objection noted from the EFF. It's noted, Honorable
Please note
Swartz.
the ACDP, thank you.
No further objections. With that, it's agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Climate Change Bill.
Thank you. The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. Order, honorable members. I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the maids to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.